Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Star Wars Stuff podcast. My name is David, and I am joined by.
What's up, guys? My name is Zach.
What's up, Zach? How was your Christmas? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too. My Christmas was very awesome. It was for those listening and watching. I'm out in Michigan where it's usually snowing around this time of year, and it was very green, so no snow, and which is nice for travel to go from one family's house to the next. But it was definitely an interesting, warm green Christmas. You could probably sit out on your porch and have a cup of coffee and enjoy it comfortably, and that's kind of unheard of in this area during this time of year. But how about
Yeah,
you,
I know
David?
it's wild because we had a Christmas where it was like a blizzard in our estimation. I know not for you guys, but down here there was snow on the ground a couple years ago, and then they predicted we're going to have another huge white Christmas, and it didn't happen. We haven't
Oh
even
wow,
froze yet down here in South Texas. So
crazy.
yeah, and 2023 is coming to an end. It was a big Star Wars year. There's a lot to talk about. I think a few people are going to drop on late here to the podcast and talk about their experiences. But yeah, we want to talk about everything that happened in 2023. It was a huge year. What is up, Liam? Liam is out there watching us across the pond. And yeah, it's been a while since I've done a live podcast. I know that Colin and Ray have done a couple out there. You can see them on YouTube. But if you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, what your favorite moment of 2023 was for Star Wars. There's a ton of moments, a ton of events, a ton of shows. Unfortunately, no movies. There were some pseudo films out there, kind of like Rebel Moon that just dropped.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a Star Wars film. Zack Snyder pitched it to George Lucas, and I think the actual story kind of morphed from George Lucas actually recruited Zack Snyder to be in Star Wars, but then he sold to Disney, and Disney said no. He did kind of like a re-pitch to Kathleen Kennedy and the top brass, and they just said no, we don't want to do that. And he made an R-rated Star Wars. It's on Netflix right now. I don't think the R-rated version is on there yet. I think that comes out next year. It's kind of weird what they're doing.
And it's a
So
two-parter, right?
yes, there are two parts, and the first part is out right now, and then the second part drops, I think, next in like maybe in March or something. I'm not up to speed with it. The reviews aren't looking too great,
Yeah,
so
I've
I
seen
don't
that
know.
as well.
It kind of is what it is. When you look at Rotten Tomatoes, you see the tomato meter, and the
Hmm.
critics is like 23%, but the fans are like 73%.
Hmm.
I think it's one of those things that I usually trust the fans.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, it was a celebration year. Celebration happened in Europe, in London, and Colin, myself, and Josh, we all made the trip across the pond. I think maybe that for us personally, maybe that was the biggest event. Um, I know those guys are about to jump on. I know they have a lot of stuff to add to it. But Zach, aside from celebration, what was the biggest event for you this year in 2023 for Star Wars?
I'd say that I finally got my platinum trophy for Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga yesterday. I'm just kidding, but I did do that yesterday, and it took me like a year and a half and like 100 hours to finally do it. Um, I would probably say Ahsoka. Just the hype for Ahsoka was unreal for me, and I thought it delivered on every level. And just waiting with my wife to watch the new episode every night, refreshing the TV and getting it ready to stream. That was definitely a highlight for me this year with Star Wars in general. And I guess Jedi Survivor was a big one because that game came out on my birthday, and that was a fun day for me as well to get it and play it a little bit. But I'd definitely say Ahsoka would be my top Star Wars experience for the year.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
I think for us in our Star Wars bubble, Ahsoka was maybe the highlight because, of course, we got to see Ezra in live action, Sabine in live action, and also the introduction of Thrawn in live action. I thought
yeah,
that was a huge moment for live action Star Wars. And I think everyone that listens to the podcast knows that I think live action Star Wars for me is like the pinnacle of Star Wars, and that's what I'm the biggest fan of.
for sure.
And for me, that show it did deliver. It did deliver, but it didn't get really good reviews outside of the fandom.
Hmm.
People were kind of confused and kind of didn't have that investment that a lot of us had due to Rebels and just them being ubiquitous within the Star Wars sphere because you learned who Ezra was, I think, just via social media and friends, even if you didn't watch Rebels. And the same thing goes with Thrawn. Thrawn's been around since the 90s.
Yeah.
It's it's just one of those things. But the storytelling really delivered. The creatures, the worlds, casting was spot on. And here we got Josh joining us. We're just talking about Ahsoka. We were waiting there until you joined. You and Colin doing to talk about Celebration. But Josh, how have you been?
Sheesh, we've been doing well. How's it been going with you guys? I mean, every day new things. Enjoying working at Galaxy's Edge. It's been pretty fun. Super busy right now because of the holidays, but that's still pretty fun.
Yeah. And I've seen video, so it's not a secret, right? That during the holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, those are the prime days for the non-normies to show up to the parks, right? Did you work during Christmas?
Yeah. Well, I didn't work Christmas Day, but yeah, you still get a ton of people coming in. But Ashley will come through. You get tons of different Star Wars actors coming through. It's pretty fun. I mean, I would say it's definitely one of the most busy times of the year. Like, you got to send tons and tons of people through this ride, so it's pretty cool to see how many people we can actually get on this ride and have their fun little Star Wars experience. No more Halcyon, which is sad, but it is what it is.
Yep,
I think we've had a lot of
moment.
Star Wars this year. A lot of Star Wars.
Were you able to get on the Halcyon at any point in time?
Could I? Yes. Did I? No. It was a little bit too much out of my price budget, but yeah.
Yeah, I think price was one of the biggest factors for people actually going there and booking it out. I think initially when they thought that the Halcyon was going to succeed, they thought that everyone would have paid anything to get on that ship.
Mhm.
And I think the combination of the pricing and the combination of what they had to offer via the marketing, it didn't work for the people outside of our Star Wars bubble.
It is very interesting because everyone that I have actually seen who's gone on it, especially like Hunter's side, has said, "Oh, it's been amazing." So they're like, "Oh, it's completely worth it. I got to go back." So everyone who did spend the money and went on it, they enjoyed it. So
yeah, I imagine the immersion being in Star Wars. I mean, that's a dream. That's everyone's dream here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for that to happen, no matter if it's original trilogy or prequels or High Republic, it had to have been spectacular because I mean, there's no windows.
I think everything that we originally wanted to plan for Galaxy's Edge is there or was there. So any of those cool interactions, like if you're paying a lot of money, you're paying for this interaction, you're paying for this show, and you're going to have that there.
Yeah.
People, that was the original plan for Galaxy's Edge. We could only do it to a T because people weren't only there for Galaxy's Edge. Because beforehand, you used to have to be completely into it and be able to answer every question in a Star Wars way. But nowadays, it's kind of like, all right, that's the bathroom. Because back in the old days, we used to say refresher. And I can tell you now, the amount of times people are like, where's the bathroom? You're like, refresher? Or, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, traveler. When they're saying like, hey, where do I get burgers and fries? Yeah, didn't make anyone happy. But nowadays, like, that's how it's kind of changed over. But when it was on the Halcyon, you would stick to those kinds of stories, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, so James has just joined us on the podcast, and James, you need to watch what you say because we're talking about Galaxy's Edge.
Okay. Sorry. Maybe I should get off then.
I hate that place.
No, James loved it. He went back over and over again, but it's just like the details and the secrets and
I see.
We're not allowed to share.
So there's a door in. I'm just joking.
There's this hatch.
One of my favorite games there in Galaxy's Edge was what's made out of wood and what is metal was like my favorite game to play when you look at certain things on the Millennium Falcon and Rise of the, that's all I'm gonna say is just you look at some of the things you're like, is that wood or is that metal? Anyways,
So now all of our listeners are gonna go and like knock
gonna be
on
like,
everything.
touching everything.
Oh, dude, everyone does that in the Falcon, which is pretty funny. That's like one of the first things that people do. Is they
Really?
expect the side
makes
panels to be squishy, so
Yep.
they like punch the side panels.
and they press all the buttons. They press every button.
Yep,
there.
every single button.
Oh
That's what I
my.
would do when I was there in the main hold. I would just be when there's nobody around. I'd just be like, I'd be like, this is amazing. This is it. This is the best. So yeah.
So yeah,
So
we spoke a little bit about Ahsoka. Zach said that was like his big moment of the year, and of course, I think my big moment and maybe Josh's big moment was Celebration. But Colin's going to join us here in a little bit, so all three of us can talk about that. But James, what was your big moment of 2023 for Star Wars for you personally?
So this is going to sound very cheesy and sentimental, but it was showing my wife Rebels and her just really loving Rebels. And we're still watching it, but her just being like, oh, this is my favorite Star Wars. That's what she told me. She said Rebels is her favorite Star Wars that she's
That's
ever
awesome.
seen. She loves the characters. She loves Hera, and like, you know, she's just like, this is the coolest show I've ever seen. So for me, that was the highlight, was finally finding something Star Wars that my wife is really likes. So yeah, that was it for me.
That's
And
very
plus-
cool.
and
Oh, go ahead.
plus, those last like 4 or 5 episodes of Ahsoka were just the best. So yeah, I'm gonna say that as well.
That's awesome. I can definitely relate to that with showing your wife Rebels. That's something my wife very much enjoyed when I showed her a lot of the Star Wars projects that were out at the time. And Rebels is definitely one she, I believe, liked the most. She really did like Clone Wars, but Rebels, she really liked that family aspect that was involved with it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So yeah, that was mine. Ahsoka was my highlight best show for me this year. And yeah, Ahsoka that's my second
hot
favorite.
take.
That's my second favorite of the Star Wars Disney Plus shows. That Ahsoka's Andor, and then Ahsoka for me.
Yep,
Awesome.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, Andor was
was
something
definitely one of my biggest highlights of this year, of how much of a shocker it was to being actually really good. Because I think when it got announced, I was like, why does this guy get his own show? Like, I was like, who cares? And then after like that first few episodes, I was like, oh, this is serious. I was like, I like this.
Yeah, it was good stuff. And but unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Star Wars Celebration like y'all did. So of course I can imagine that was just the best, and makes me sad. But I'm glad y'all got to go, and I'm glad y'all got to see trailers that nobody has seen
Yeah.
yet.
Still, no one
Still
has
out
seen.
there.
It's
So yeah,
insane.
that's a big low light of 2023. The fact that Lucasfilm didn't release the trailers from Celebration, which we still don't understand
I don't
what
get
the
it.
reasoning is behind that. Because I mean, that just makes people release their really bad, shaky cell phone camera footage on the internet. It's all out there. And wouldn't you want your best stuff that you're going to promote on the best picture in
Right. And plus,
1080p, 4K?
it just doesn't make sense not to show it to everybody. I mean, you're there in the room, you're there, you got to see it live, you got to see the cast and crew, and you got to see the trailer first, which is great. Why not just drop it later,
Yeah.
like they did with literally everything else before Celebration?
Right.
But I remember it wasn't until Celebration Chicago, whenever they did the whole Mandalorian sneak peek and they didn't show anyone else, I remember I was a little peeved. I was like, that's a little upsetting they did that. And then we didn't realize that they were setting the stage now for you. Only the ones in the room get to see it. Nobody else gets to see any of this. And I think
we got
that
done
is
in
a
by the lottery
major,
system.
that is a major just, I hate that so much. But
Yeah,
because
we've spoken about a lot of things on the podcast in the past about how Lucasfilm needs to change this and change that. It seems like they're slowly doing those changes, so I think we got to keep on talking about that aspect.
yes, I'll keep bringing it up. Yeah,
And yeah, I mean the big thing is that Star Wars Celebration sells out almost in minutes. You know,
Yeah.
10 minutes, 20 minutes, everything's gone. All the passes are sold. The VIP passes sell like in a microsecond.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're not getting butts in the seats, you know. I mean, they're not. They don't have trouble selling tickets. So if it's a sellout, you probably should just release the footage later and just tell the crowd, hey, look, you're gonna get to see it first, and then the world will get to see it 30 minutes later, an hour from now, or whatever. But you get the exclusive. I think that makes all the sense in the world. I don't think there's a negative to it. You build up goodwill, you build up the hype, and it would be perfect. That would be the perfect Star Wars world right there.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on from that, all the lowlights, I think, they jump to my mind, especially this time of year, because when that investor call happened back in 2019, they announced a movie for, I believe it was December 23rd, or no, December 17th, I believe. It was supposed to be Rogue Squadron. So right now, we should have all been talking about our Rogue Squadron experience.
I should have been wearing a Rogue Squadron shirt right now. Like that's what should have been happening right now.
Right. Kathleen Kennedy announced Rogue Squadron, and it wasn't just one of those flippant announcements where the Disney brass was like, you got to say something. You got to say. They planned out. The story goes they planned out to release that video during the 2020 celebration where Patty Jenkins is doing the roller skating or rollerblading on the tarmac. But of course, that year they canceled Celebration due to the pandemic. So they had the video lined up. They shot it. They got us all hyped up. Patty Jenkins gave us that story of her dad was a fighter pilot. And I was like, okay, this is definitely going to happen. Rogue Squadron, there's a huge hit series of books in the 90s. And you hear all the old heads talk about it like it was like the greatest Star Wars thing out there. And it's like, okay, it's like the ending of Rogue One, but a movie. Yeah, fighter pilots. Yes, let's go. I want to see that space battle galore. And Patty Jenkins bailed out. Let go, fired. We don't really know. Wonder Woman 84 came out right before, like right after that announcement was made.
Yeah, because the announcement was in November. Wonder Woman came out in December.
I think it came out a year later. I could be wrong, but it definitely came out around Christmas time because I remember watching it streaming at home with my family.
Pedro Pascal was like the villain too.
Yeah.
So there were Star Wars ties in there, and it bombed. The movie was not good, guys.
It was bad.
I don't know if you watched. I tried to watch it.
It was bad.
There were certain moments that were okay, but collectively it was not good. And Lucasfilm now, they have that track record. If they announce a director and then a project comes out and it bombs, that director is like removed. It's given like the hook quickly. Colin Trevorrow with the Book of Henry.
I just wish, because Richard Marquand wasn't a big director when he got Return of the Jedi. They didn't make a big deal that Richard Marquand was directing Return of the Jedi. You know what I mean? They just said, we have a new director for the new Star Wars movie. Irvin Kershner was kind of royalty, if you may, in the directors of that time. A lot of the guys knew him, but his movies weren't huge. He didn't have big movies. He had TV shows and a few movies.
Right.
And he got Empire Strikes Back. They were like, oh yeah, we got to do. I just wish they would kind of not make a big deal about who the directors are going to be. I think that's what kind of.
Yeah, the nuance and the circumstances behind Kershner was actually one of George Lucas's professors at USC, and George Lucas looked up to Kershner. So Kershner wasn't going to be a yes man to George Lucas. He was going to say, "This is good. This is working." And of course, there's that's, I think, almost unanimously the best Star Wars film that has ever been made. And George Lucas didn't like a lot of the aspects of it, but I mean, it's the best film. And it's kind of hard to argue that. But the whole thing with Richard Marquand, Steven Spielberg was supposed to direct Return of the Jedi, but of course Lucas dropped out of the Directors Guild and all the other like associations that he was a part of, and of course Steven Spielberg didn't want to do that, and he got Richard Marquand to direct famously. And the story goes is that George Lucas was there every day on set, and he was essentially kind of directing the film. That's the story, at least.
That's the story. But I know Richard Marquand's children will say otherwise. They will say, my dad did direct a lot of this movie. Speaking of
I totally believe that.
Yeah. Speaking of Return of the Jedi, this was the 40th anniversary this year of Return of the Jedi. And again, like I said, a lot of these stories I came out this year where Richard Marquand's children were like, I hate that people kind of say my dad didn't direct Return of the Jedi. They were like, he was there. I was on set with him. He was there with the actors. He was fashioning this whole thing together. And although I did see a behind the scenes video where Richard Marquand totally says something and nobody's listening to him. No one listens. George Lucas and I forget who are in front of him just talking about something.
Oh boy.
And then George Lucas starts to talk and then everyone listens and you're like,
So yeah, speaking about directors though, so Gareth Edwards, he dropped The Creator this year, which a lot of people didn't go see. It's on Disney Plus right now, actually. Surprising that his movie got on Disney Plus, but there's a lot of Star Wars ties to that film. I know Kiri Hart left Lucasfilm and she became a producer, and that film has a lot of like big time talent, and that movie now is famous for being shot very under budget. I think it was $80 million in total. And the camera they used was a camera that you could buy off the shelf. Super expensive camera, but I mean, they shot it with like a standard like civilian. It was like maxed out to like the nth degree, but I believe it was Sony. Yeah, and it looked like a big time Hollywood production, and it looked good. From all accounts, I know Colin, who was just in the waiting room there, was saying that he liked it. It wasn't anything that was out of the ordinary from other sci-fi. And I think Josh on a previous podcast, he said it looked like kind of like par for the course with like all like the Blade Runner copies and dystopian sci-fi stuff, and it looked like it had all the similar tropes. And I think that was true. I didn't get to see the film. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm a big fan of Gareth Edwards. I feel like he's still part of the family. I would love to see him come back and do something else. I don't know if thinking that when he was on set, I mean, it was hard for him to shoot Star Wars, because I think if one of us was on set trying to shoot Star Wars, it might be a lot. It might be a little bit too much because you're shooting Star Wars. And that would be a tall super order. And he's a super fan too. I mean, he went to Tunisia. He drank the blue milk there, I mean, he did all the stuff that he had, like, he proved to Celebration back in 2015 that he was the right man for the job. But that pressure, man, that's a lot of pressure to take on. And
it's interesting to me because he's able to do literally everything for a movie. Like, write, direct, even visual effects, all that kind of stuff. He taught himself how to do everything. And I honestly think that we should go and do a see what sticks on the wall kind of situation where we go like, hey, here's a $20 million budget. Go make some fun Star Wars stuff. And then if people they like it, let's take some risks here. If not, it's only $20 million. We didn't pump a ton of money into it.
They're too scared, though. Disney is too scared to even attempt anything like that.
I don't know why. Because
it's the shareholders. For them, it's a cash cow. Star Wars is a cash cow for Disney. That is money without even having to try. And I think that's what scares them, is if they pour a little bit of money and it doesn't make that money back, they're gonna start losing faith in the project and in you know what I mean, in Star Wars. And I think it just scares them. I think taking a risk like that freaks them out. And they took a risk with Solo, and it didn't work. And I think
that one was so much money. Like, my point is that if it's low enough, the loss isn't nearly as bad. Because if you could put in perspective of like Godzilla -1, which was like 18 million or even less than that, and it absolutely made so much money to the point where they're like, it's like 10 times the amount that they had originally invested in. And I'm sitting here like, I would love to see someone try and get around the fact that they have a lower budget. Because like when I watched like his latest movie, so I thought that Like for me, I was like, this is a lower budget movie, but he knows how to direct it and work every last penny into this film. I don't like when people are like, here, just keep taking money. And they're like, oh, okay, if things work out, they work out or not. So, I mean, it scares me with the Marvel side of how much money we can pump into something and then it doesn't make it back. So I think if we start lowering budgets, people have to really try to get it to push along. So I think I'm excited to see
And
what
you
can
know
come
what?
from that.
I want that. I want that so bad because that gives opportunity for newer directors to come in, newer directors
For sure.
who maybe
Yeah.
just had a great, indie film or a short film, and then Disney is like, here's 20 million, go shoot a Star Wars project. And just I don't know. I think, like you said, you get the right person in there, like almost like Gareth Edwards, and they can create something pretty awesome with that. It's just I don't know, man. I don't know. Did they have their idea of what Star Wars should be? And I think they just want to stick with that. They don't want to try anything new, unfortunately.
And Solo was supposed to be a trilogy, right? Or something along those lines. I might have seen that somewhere, and I could have that idea wrong.
In
Well,
the
I know that
contracts, I think
Yeah.
it was written that Alden Ehrenreich could come back and option out a sequel.
Okay.
I think that's actually going to happen, but I don't think it's going to be in Solo. I think it's going to be more like in Lando. I think that's going to count for his second film.
Sure.
And I think he has a film after that he has option for.
Sure.
So.
And that movie did make its money back, but it was not by much.
Yeah,
I believe, right?
It broke
didn't-
even, but it was determined that it was a bomb.
Okay.
By Star Wars standards, but I mean it made its money back.
budget.
But there was a lot of controversy on that too, because Lord and Miller got fired. They shot a whole movie, 2 weeks left in principal photography. They got let go. Then Ron Howard had to step in. So I would love to see that film, see what that looked like. But
I don't want to see that film. I honestly do not want to see that movie.
Why not? They did. So they went from that to doing Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I mean,
that
they
was
didn't.
brilliant.
Mind you, they didn't direct Spider-Verse. They have a good
Right.
eye.
They
They
had
know
to
what they're.
oversee.
They know what's going on. But from what I heard, and from like a few of the deleted scenes that were there that they directed, it's like, oh, this movie was really goofy. It was too much fun for Star Wars. And I think the story goes, Alden Ehrenreich was the one who was like, all right, we're not doing the right thing with this project.
But 2 weeks left in principal? I mean, that doesn't kinda make sense.
It is shocking. It is shocking that nobody saw the footage until then. But then again, you hear Kevin Feige didn't read the script to Blade until 2 weeks before production was going to start.
Yeah,
he
but
goes,
Kevin
"Whoa."
Feige has like 30 projects happening simultaneously. Star Wars, you don't have that excuse.
True, very true. But at that time, though, well, one more thing is Kennedy was also trying to get Mando going as well behind the scenes. She was also producing the other Star Wars movies, trying to get those going. And then I'm pretty sure they were like, we need this, 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 and this. And I guess Solo to them felt like, oh, this is gonna make money. There's no way this is gonna be a bad movie. We hired great directors and writers. This is gonna be amazing. And then that's when they found out, actually, no. But I liked what we got with Solo. I think Ron Howard, what he did, how he's pretty much, I'm not gonna say save the movie, but his vision for that was pretty great. And I wish he would come back for another Star Wars project, because out of every director that's ever done a Star Wars movie, I think he's the more successful of all the directors. I mean, mind you, he's been doing it for a lot longer, but still,
Right.
I think it'd be good to see him come back to do a Star Wars project. But Solo 2, no. But I never heard that, David, that that Lando could possibly like be that Solo. Like, Alden Ehrenreich could come in and
One of the big news stories for the year was that Donald Glover and his brother were writing the Lando film, and I think Justin Simeon, who was on the project, found out about it through the press that he wasn't on it anymore. And I think that's the way the story goes.
That hurts.
But I mean, Donald Glover, he's a tremendous talent. I mean, he's
one of the best.
Yeah, I mean, he's a polymath. I mean, he raps,
The
acts,
Star Wars
produce.
show like Atlanta sounds great.
And that's another thing. Like, a lot of people
And
don't
it's on Hulu.
realize the success he's had, though. Like Donald Glover's success. Like, what he's accomplished at his age doesn't get recognized. A lot of people don't realize what
That
he's
is very
done.
interesting, James. That is true. That is true.
Like people will just go, "Oh yeah, he's the singer," but it's like stand-up comedian, showrunner, and writer. There you go, showrunner and writer, and he won Grammys. I think he's won Emmys. He's won. I think he's just short of an Oscar at this point, but he's almost an EGOT, I believe. And hey, Colin. And but yeah, it almost felt like he was waiting for that to happen. Donald Glover was waiting to write the movie. You know what I mean? Like he was just kind of like, I'm not going to say anything. They're going to do this project. And then once it was announced that this other director or writer was leaving, it was almost like he was like, yes, this is what I want to do my own Lando movie.
Yeah, and speaking of waiting, we've been waiting here for Colin to talk about Star Wars Celebration 2023 in Europe.
Welcome back, Colin.
In London,
Thank
our
you.
London experience. I know Colin, Josh, and myself can speak to it. So, Colin, lead us off. What was the big event this year?
Podcast
2023.
Oi!
Oh man.
Oi! Podcast! That is an inside joke between the three of us. And I don't think we should say that. Say
Sick invite, guys.
sorry, man. Yeah, to be there. Man, so crazy enough, this was my first time overseas, and I think it was David's first time overseas
Mine
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember the whole experience was excitement, very nervous, and just incredible. And I just remember going to these panels and just realizing, oh, it's Star Wars Celebration, and then I would be like, wait a minute, I'm not even in America anymore. I never thought my first time out of the country would be because of Star Wars, but then at the same time, it's just like, you know what, it makes sense.
Makes sense.
It
Yeah.
just makes sense. And I just had such an incredible time, and I don't know if it was because of because at the time my life was just 100% Star Wars all the time because I was currently working at Galaxy's Edge. So it's like, ooh, I was just on Batu. Now I'm on a plane and now I'm going into like a Star Wars convention. And then after the Star Wars convention was done, it was like, okay, now I'm going back into, onto the planet Batu. So it's like Star Wars is just happening constantly. And even though I'm not at Galaxy's Edge anymore, my life is still like that. It's just Star Wars all the time, and I have no problem with it.
You're telling me you're not on the Halcyon right now?
It looks like you're on the Halcyon right now. Just saying.
Yeah. So yeah, no. I think it's probably that panel of where we were lucky enough to go to the where we got to see all this stuff over at the Lucasfilm panel. So we actually got to see the Acolyte trailer. We actually got to see the Skeleton Crew trailer and all that stuff. And
There's
I
trailers
just
for that stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
See, that's what I was saying. I'm a little upset about that. That it's been this
Yes.
long and we still haven't seen any of
To
it.
us normies, those don't exist yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not. They were just only trailers. They were incredible, dude. They were
Yeah.
very good.
You were just like smacking them in the face. Guys,
Dang.
you missed a huge opportunity. They were amazing. Sorry you weren't there, but hey. But yeah, no, they were fantastic. And then we also got the trailer for Andor season 2, and now that's getting postponed. So who knows when that trailer will end up coming out, probably at the end of 2024, because we know it's
And
not coming
the
out. so-
final season of the Bad Batch.
Yes, that. And I don't think Josh and I were really expecting to see a trailer, but then we got to the end and then we're like, oh, okay. And it's
Wait, y'all saw
yeah.
the trailer? I didn't know that. I didn't know they showed a Bad Batch season 3 trailer. Was it a teaser?
Do
or
you
was it a
not
trailer?
listen?
No, it was
to
a
the-
full trailer, dude. It was a full
Yeah.
trailer.
Do you not listen to the Star Wars Stuff podcast, James?
I do
or-
listen to, but when it came to Celebration, I was a little bitter, and I was like, I'm just gonna ignore a lot of this conversation. That man, I'm really
Yeah.
upset now. I'm really
Yeah,
even more
we-
Didn't they
upset.
show us like the first 20 minutes too?
Don't
of-
shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
They did, right?
No.
Like
no.
the big crab came out on the ocean.
No, that was season 2.
Oh, that's season 2.
That
Oh,
was
Yeah.
season-
yeah. That was No, that was season 2 over at Celebration Anaheim.
Josh
is
thoroughly
is
confused
where
here. I
it was
think our audio listeners are too. So every time
Yeah.
James makes a gesture, like something happens on the
You gotta
screen.
do one of these, James.
Yeah, because James is using his iPhone for video on YouTube and Twitter. So with all the emojis popping up.
Oh man.
So.
Yeah. Yes. So we had all that going on, and then we had some Jedi Survivor stuff. And I remember walking around with Josh, and I know that was one of the most anticipating things that Josh was excited for. And it was funny because the game got delayed. And there was advertisement. There were advertisements for that game
Dude.
everywhere we went.
Yeah.
Not even just a celebration, but if you were just walking on the streets of London, they just had it like on the signs. And Josh and I were like, "I just want to play the game. That's all I want to do right now."
They had like double-decker buses with signage, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was pretty cool to see, man.
That's awesome.
First time in London
No.
seeing a Star Wars advertisement. Yeah.
And then, as a huge Indiana Jones fan I am, it was really cool to get to see footage from that movie. And I just remember like kind of looking at David and Josh, and they were just like this because, like it's just like,
Get to the
okay.
Star Wars stuff, man.
Right. And I was just like, this is great. This is fantastic. And the movie was, but like it's oh
Yeah.
man. It was just so cool, and it just reminds me of how much I love Star Wars Celebration. And that was also Josh's first Star Wars Celebration, so that
That's
also
wild.
made me happy that we were able to experience that with him. Josh, did
Yeah.
you already talk about your experience of Celebration? Okay.
Oh well, yeah, a little bit, but
It was good. It was a little confusing, but it was good. That first day
Yes.
we were there, we were trying to figure out where to go, and then
Yes,
we ended up
was
accidentally joining
terrifying.
like a 4-hour line. That was a lot of fun.
That sounds horrible. I just remember you guys called me, and y'all were. It was like the night before, and y'all were trying to figure out where to park, and y'all were just driving in circles.
yeah, that
looking
was
for a place to
horrible.
park, and I'm like, I'm kind of glad I'm not there because that looks very, very
It was a
just
nightmare.
overwhelming.
Well, I just remember the first night that we were all there, and our friend Carl was driving his car, and we were going like to like different places.
That was good fun.
And Carl thought that he was driving on a road, but he wasn't driving on a road, and it ended up being like a
Wow.
sidewalk leading to
Was
a
he flying?
restaurant.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I mean, it is pretty easy to confuse the two. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
But
it was so funny. That first night was just us being like, we have no idea what we're doing. We're just gonna hit the streets of London and
Typical
see what
tourist
happens.
moment.
Yeah.
awesome.
We're Americans. No, I'm just kidding. Just get up and yell that out. Really
They could probably tell you that if they saw
were
something
like-
like that.
No.
Yeah, I had
Um,
no idea if I was going to go to London or not. I was like very
No.
much 50-50. And
Darren
then
and I
at the
had no
last
idea.
moment, I was like, do I still have time to buy a passport? And I contacted the post office. I put it off for so long, and then I did get a passport, my first passport. And then
Yeah,
I was
same.
like, I guess I'm doing this. And my buddy Carl, who Colin just mentioned, he was able to get a pretty good rate on a hotel, and we figured out the flight situation. And of course, him and I, we live in South Texas, so we took a flight together over there, and Josh and Colin flew over there.
We got
What?
good tickets, bro. We got
Yes.
so good tickets.
Yeah.
Like, our
that was like
tickets were
perfect timing.
stupid cheap.
Yeah. Yes. Because I just remember calling Josh, and I told him the price of them, and then he's like, "Wait, no, wait, hang on, I'll check with my dad." And he's like, "Yep, they're real." And then I was like, "Dude, buy them." Go. So
Yeah, it was a stupid good deal.
Yeah.
I
So
almost went.
yeah, it was so kind of, I don't know, that flight was like 9 hours for me and Carl.
Oof.
It went by
That's the plan.
pretty quickly. I mean, I don't love to fly, but I think I've done it so much, and I've had other friends that do it so much that it's really. The flight back I thought it was going to be horrible because the flight over there, it was like jam packed. But the thing is, we got on British Airways, so once you get on, all the flight attendants were speaking London English, so it was like you were already in London, and you already had that feel. And it was 9 hours just sitting up, couldn't lay down. I would just simply get up to go to the restroom just to stretch my legs and just like stand in the restroom, and then walk back to my seat just because of my legs. I'm
Yeah, I
not a
keep
short
forgetting
guy.
how
was-
tall David is.
Yeah.
So so once we got there, of course, we had to coordinate with Colin and Josh because you guys flew into like Scotland or something, right? First,
No,
We were in Ireland.
we flew into Ireland, which that was a whole
Ireland.
thing.
Okay.
Yes,
Careful.
because they were telling us to go one place first. We went to the state, and the person was like, actually, no, you were supposed to go to this gate. And we were like, okay. And then we went to the other side of the airport, and they're like, no, guys, you have to go to the other one. And Josh and I were like, our flight is going to leave like in 30 minutes. What the hell do we do? So we were confused until I don't think it was even like someone that worked there. They were just like, guys, you're in the right spot. They don't know what they're doing. And then Josh and I were like, oh, okay. And then we just sat there. Yeah. But that whole experience was just like, all right. And then we got into London, and then, which I will say this, do not go by taxi, get an Uber.
Did they not
Taxi
drive on
is so
sidewalks?
expensive. Go Uber.
Did they not drive on sidewalks?
Yeah. But yeah, no,
So,
man.
Yeah,
that whole
Carl
experience was just-
did a Tesla for us, essentially.
No.
So we had that. The wheel was on the opposite side. Of course, you got to drive on the left-hand lane.
Nope.
He's
Whoa.
European, though, and he's driven in London before, so I had all the confidence in the world. And he's like a car guy, too, so I thought I had nothing to worry about. But I think we wrecked about like 3 times in that car.
Oh my god.
And we almost had a head-on collision one night, and we stopped, and Carl and I just looked at each other like, yeah, it's time to go back to the hotel.
Well,
So yeah, we
Yeah.
made it out unscathed. But I mean, we didn't hit anything to the point where it really damaged the vehicle, because when we took it back to the rental place, they looked it over and said it was fine, and we're like, okay, let's go. So
Whatever you say, man.
yeah,
done that.
yeah,
I've
there
done that
were
before.
definitely scratches on it. And that story where Colin said that he was driving and the road kind of did turn into a sidewalk. We tried
Josh and
to
I
do
were just
like
dying in the back.
we tried to do a 3-point turn to get back out. And when he was doing that, he relied on the technology a little bit too much. And I told him, hey, Carl, there's a bench right behind us. We're about to hit it. He's like, oh,
Yes.
no, the cameras will pick it up. He drives straight into the bench,
Oh my
and it was like a loud smack. And then it was like, yeah, we can't. Yeah,
Well,
Teslas are still
so-
not fully baked there.
So here is the funnier part of the story that you're leaving out. As this is happening, there's a restaurant right next to us, and we just look over, and people are just eating, and they just look up and they're like, what is going on?
And there was a pier there too. I'm glad he didn't like trust the
Yes.
map fully. We would have driven
Oh my
into
gosh.
the
Holy
timber.
This sounds like a sitcom episode, guys. Someone should have recorded
Dude.
this.
funny.
That like first night was just full of in anticipation, and then like of just us being very jet lagged and not knowing what to do. It was just so funny.
And see, the thing is, he was relying on the Tesla GPS, and that was the thing that was messed up. It wasn't very accurate. It would tell us to go specific spots that didn't lead to our final destination. You would have to like take the car and lift it in the air and put it over a wall to get there. It wasn't updated. But aside from that, going to the Excel Center is very, very small compared to what all the pictures you see online.
100%.
I was expecting it to be a little bit bigger, but it's like a big corridor, and then off to the sides are like almost like the receiving areas. It's like a big warehouse type setup with really big garage doors, and that's how they had Celebration. You walk through the middle, either went to the left or the right of the big like halls that were separated by walls, and then there was an upstairs portion, and the big arena, or the section that made up for the lack of an arena, the big hall to sit in for the big panels. It was all the way down at the end and down some steps to get to. I went in at once for like 10 seconds for the Visions 2 panel, and then the guy was like, you don't have a badge, or you don't have permission, you need to get out. And I'm like, okay.
What?
But
You
yeah,
said I'm an American. That's I would have been dropping that the whole time.
That's how I
was there.
roll.
I'm an American, and I would have just kept walking.
I don't think you needed a badge or something to get into the Visions season 2.
I think I went
because-
in. The way I got in was where the VIPs got into, and then they started
Okay.
checking everyone's like VIP badge.
Gotcha.
And he's like, no VIP, you need to get out, because it was almost, I think it was like to the point where they were showing that new episode,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to go in there and look to see because I didn't win the lottery for any of the panels in there, so I just wanted to like take a peep and leave,
Yeah.
and that's what I did. But I know Colin, he got to go to a bunch of different panels.
I somehow got in. Long story short, somehow I got into the Ahsoka panel.
He was our
I was
Boston
just
spy.
sitting there, and I was like, I can't believe I'm in here because I didn't win the lottery. I just somehow just got in there, and I just found a seat. I sat there, and I'm like, wow, this is great. So, yeah, no, that whole experience was just fantastic. Of just seeing the trailer and having all the actors up on stage, it was amazing. And then we were there for Bad Batch season 2. I mean, for season 3, we were there for Visions. I was there for the Parks panel, which they really didn't announce anything except they dropped that Gaia poster and they advertised the Halcyon in such a big way, like in there. So I'm like, ooh, they're doing something great with it. And then a month later, it's
Axed
done.
it.
It's like, hey, guys, guess what? Peace. And I was like, okay. But good news for Star Tours next year, though, because they are adding new missions.
Yay!
For Star Tours, like with new planets. So my guess is most likely they'll end up like doing stuff from the Mandalorian, and they'll be doing stuff from Ahsoka. I think a really cool planet would be adding Corellia, and then you could get like the Star Tours point of view of what the Smugglers Run like mission is on that ride. It would be super cool to like see the Falcon there, and then maybe you see
You have the best
Hondo,
ideas.
and then Hondo's like, wait, what's going on? Star Tours, why are you here? And then you just hear Chewie in the background, and I think
That
would
sounds
That'd be
like
sweet.
such a no-brainer that it makes me sad that they probably were not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like that sounds like something
Yeah.
It's a slam
that seems
dunk.
like the simplest thing for them to do. A slam dunk, as David always says, that they're not going to do. There he is. He's over there doing that. But yeah, I think we're going to have Grogu a lot more at Star Tours. I think Grogu's going to,
Yeah.
I think that's
Mhm,
the
for
big
sure.
deal, is to somehow get him in there. Hell, even changing the logo if you made to have you okay, so Disney
change the logo of Star Tours. Are you
Exactly.
mad?
Not the logo, but just the feel of it. Like when I went in there the other
Get
day, I
outta
was
here.
like, God, they still have the episode 1 era like stuff there. Like they have come to Naboo and blah 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 blah, this and that, and then you're like, oh okay, and then you're watching it, then you're just like, why haven't they updated this thing yet? I'm not talking about the mission, Colin. I'm talking about the like when you walk into the main lobby, they have videos playing and stuff like that. And
It's still cool.
it's
How
cool.
dare you?
But no, it's cool. But then you look at it and you're like, man, they haven't updated this thing in a while, like the look of it. And I think that's what they need to do. I think they need to update the look of how Star Tours
That was
is.
one of the okay. So here's my thing: is that Star Tours in general, all of the original missions that they added to Star Tours: The Adventure Continues was one of the last projects that George Lucas actually worked on. I don't want them to mess with it. I don't want them to do anything of where, oh hey, look, you can go to the planet Mandalore and hang out with Grogu. I don't want that. Just keep it the way it is. Add the new missions. That's it. You because if you change, to me, if you keep changing things, like especially with Star Tours of how classic it is, if you change that aspect of it, it's gonna take that classic feeling away. And that queue for that ride in general is just so cool, and it's got that classic Star Wars feel. And I really want them to change anything, because you've already got Galaxy's Edge, which is, with all the sequels and all that stuff. Adding the missions to Star Tours, that's great. But if you change the queue, to me, that's kind of changing like most of the ride. Because seeing C3PO and R2 there is like a big thing. And if you do add something with Grogu or something during the Mandalorian timeline, that's going to be kind of confusing, even though the whole Star Tours thing is technically not canon, like of all the missions and everything, because at one point you're on Hoth and then the next minute you're over Coruscant in a big battle. Like it doesn't match up. But don't change the queue. That's all I got to say.
All right, I'll let them know.
James, jeez.
Oh, hold on. There we go. Somebody said on here that Tokyo has no Uber and the trains and subways are confusing, so get ready. So when we go to Tokyo,
that thing looks like spaghetti.
we got to be ready for that because that's got to be a little
I'm
scary.
going to be walking right behind Josh. I am just going to be next to Josh the entire
However,
time.
people are a lot nicer in Japan, and they will most definitely help you. So I can't wait to bring out the translator app and be like, please help me, please.
I'm an American.
Please.
So, well, the people I wanted to talk about the people of London. The people of London for me were awesome. I thought that maybe I would get some pushback being an American with my accent, but no. I mean, everyone was friendly. There was jokes in the lines. I mean, it was the London people were awesome. I thought it was really nice experience, and I thought that my accent would get like, oh, you're an American. No, it's like a world city. There's Americans there all the time, so it's not anything out of the ordinary for them. And of course, being there, we heard German people, we heard Dutch. I mean, there was all kinds of languages spoken there. But the one thing that really kind of like freaked me out and really made me thought I lived in a simulation. I don't know if I've spoken about this on the podcast, but I was waiting in line, I think the second day. And I did the thing, of course, when you're at Celebration, you want to talk to other people in line because, of course, when is the other time that you're going to be in line where everyone knows what you're talking about when you start talking about obscure things in Star Wars? So I turned to the guy next to me who was in the line across the gate area, and I just started talking to him. And he was an American. And I was like, oh, cool. Where are you from? He goes, oh, I flew in from D.C. I said, oh, okay. And he said, yeah, I'm in the military. I've lived in Washington, but right now I live in Texas. And I said, okay.
Classic.
I was like,
Nice.
where? I was like,
Where
okay,
in
well, Texas is pretty big. Texas is like the size of what?
London,
I don't know, a couple of
or
countries.
Europe, half of Europe. Yeah,
Yeah, half of Europe essentially. So I said, okay, where in Texas do you live? He goes, oh, you wouldn't know it. It's in it's off of Redland Road in San Antonio, Texas.
That's
And
where I'm
Wow.
from.
And I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, I visit that road all the time. And I was like, how
Next person.
crazy. Yeah. I was like, next.
Well,
And it
I
was
mean,
like just two dudes talking a different language.
well, when I flew into Florida for a celebration there in 2017, I remember the first people they stopped me like, "Hey, you're a Star Wars fan?" Because I had all my Star Wars stuff on. I was like, "Of course I'm in." And they were like, "Can you tell us where this is?" And I'm talking to them, and I'm like, "I just got here, but I can maybe help you out." And then I was like, "Where y'all from?" Like, "Oh, we just flew in from Texas." And I was like, "We did too." And like, yeah, we flew in from Austin. And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, oh yeah, she went to Texas State about his wife. And I was like, I went to Texas. It was the weirdest thing. It was like, of course, the first people I speak to outside of this random hotel
Crazy.
are from Texas, and then his wife
funny.
went to the same college I went to, and
Wow.
it is a small world after all. So yeah,
And I
interesting.
kind of had that same experience in 2015, my first celebration in Anaheim, where there was a couple, they were talking about the San Antonio Spurs. And I just was like, I was like eavesdropping just to see what they would say. Like if they would mention like, I don't know, any other details, but I didn't really speak to them directly, but they were talking about the Spurs. And I think one of them was maybe wearing a Spurs jersey too. And I was like, wow, this is weird. I
That's
traveled
weird.
2,000 miles and there's Spurs fans over here talking about the Spurs at Star Wars Celebration. It's so kind of odd. But
Why talk about the Spurs? Because the Spurs are a big deal in San Antonio. There was a moment. There was a moment where the whole city was united, and it was amazing.
yeah, I think
But,
Red Ray is actually one of the Facebook users here, if not
Oh.
the Facebook user. But yeah, he couldn't make it tonight. But of course, yeah, another big highlight for the podcast and Star Wars stuff was that we brought on some new hosts, and we have
Yes.
one on right now with Zach,
A lot.
who
Woo.
discovered us on. He discovered us via. Where did you discover us, Zach?
So I got sick of a Star Wars content creator who shall not be named, and
I think I know who it is. But keep going. Keep going. Though.
Man,
Keep going.
I'll just leave that thought out there for you guys. And I believe about a year or so ago, I was just at work and like I want to listen to a Star Wars podcast. I keep driving my coworkers insane. My fiance at the time, now wife. Like I'm driving her nuts. I'm driving everybody nuts. I just need an outlet. I need to listen to people who think like I do. And I just looked up Star Wars, and you guys were in the top bunch. And I just started listening from there and never looked back. And I just sent David an email, and we talked about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and just kind of kept in touch here and there. And then I reached out. I'm like, hey man, what are the odds I could be on with you guys? And
so super funny story about that is then David then reached out to me and was like, hey, listen, this guy is a potential candidate. Can you go meet with him? And I was like, okay, cool. So we were supposed to have like a 30 or like 45 minute meeting, and because I was meeting you at some restaurant, and I sat down, and then you and I started talking for 2 hours, and I was like, this kid's got the same spark that I did
This kid.
when I first started podcasting.
I did.
Colin's 27.
I can still say it, bro.
That's too funny.
That's great.
But yeah, and
That was
oh
good.
yeah, and then also there was one time where I was at the theater, and a guest came up to me, and I turn around, and this tall guy, Zach, just is like, hey man, I'm a big fan of the podcast. And then I'm just standing there, I'm looking up, and I never look up to people unless it's like my friend John Henry or something. So I'm just like, hi, how's it going? And then he introduced himself, and like, Zach, no, you honestly were a great addition to the team, and it's great to have someone that does have that love and spark for Star Wars as much as we do. So,
well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Zach, we brought him on as a new member, a new host of the podcast, and of course he's going to, in the new year, he's going to start with Retro Ray, who's another new member of the podcast. They're going to start doing a comic book podcast, and we got some sponsors thanks to Zach and Retro Ray for the podcast to supply free physical comics to the podcast so they can
You
get
bet.
them and review them. And so, it should be a lot of fun.
And there are a ton of new Star Wars comics. Like there's
Tons.
more than you even realize how many Star Wars comics are out there, and a lot of them are canon. So there's a lot to cover, and so I good luck to both of you guys.
We're gonna need it.
There was good job. But there was a moment where I kept up with all the books, and then it just kept growing.
Dude,
And
it's
I
like
was
drinking from a fire hose. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
I lost it. I was like, man. And then like when the High Republic hit, I was like, boom, boom. I'm like, okay.
yes,
And then they just kept going, and the story has gotten even crazier from what I
Yeah.
hear. And I'm like, damn. But yeah, so awesome. I'm really glad that the two of you are going to be taking that on. And Retro Ray's great. Retro Ray's awesome. I had the pleasure of meeting him in San Antonio, and he and I just sat down after how many few hours just talking about Star Wars, and I was like, this guy is cool. Like this
Yeah.
guy is really, really cool to talk to.
Just to
And,
give Ray some credit, his drive for getting guests on the podcast is like incredible. Like he's always pushing. He's always looking to get interviews for us behind the scenes, and he's texting me and David about it all the time. And if you guys haven't listened on Patreon, we have an interview with Ross Beedman, who is the youngling that Anakin kills in Revenge of the Sith, and that was all Ray. He just reached out to the guy, and a couple of weeks later, we were talking with him for an hour or so, and it was all Ray. He's been doing a great job with roping people in.
Yeah, the thing about Retro Ray is he's local to me, so he's in South Texas. He lives in the San Antonio area, so I can actually see him. So I met him listening to our local podcast that talks about more of like just film in general, film and TV shows. And when I met him, I thought he was a member for a while on that podcast. Turns out he wasn't. He had just joined, and I was just like listening on my off time. And then I started talking to those guys, and I started helping them out more. And we just started talking more. And now I'm part of their podcast, helping out with like side stuff. And when I started talking to Ray, getting to know him, I mean, I tell him all the time, this dude, I don't know what I tell him he's a genius. I tell him to his face, because somehow, some way he achieves things that normally, like Zach said, I would maybe send out a message to someone online, say, hey, come on the podcast. What do you think? Star Stuff podcast. They just flat out no. Ray sends a message to them. Yeah, what time can we do it? And I'm like, how?
Ray's our sales
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, I don't know
How?
how.
How is that even possible? It's like there's a few people I've contacted, and then they're just like, no. And then they talk to Ray, and they're like, yeah, when can we do it? And then Ray messages me, he sends me a screenshot, and I'm like, I just spoke to that person. They said no.
He's like, I got
The same
Adam Driver
podcast.
next week, so we're gonna be interviewing Adam Driver.
But yeah, Ray is the oldest person on the podcast, but he has a lot of experience going to conventions. We
Yeah.
went to the first convention together. I can't remember which one we did, but he knew just about everyone in Artist Alley, and
That's
I
awesome.
was like, who is this dude? But yeah, he's been going to San Diego Comic-Con. He's been doing all the local cons in Texas. And we did meet someone who's an artist who hopefully in 2024 we can have on the show. And James met him at Superhero Comic-Con and Car Show. He works with all like the biggest names, and I had never heard the guy's name before, but he was the guy that designed the big mural in Chicago
Yeah.
that
I
went
love that
from
mural.
yeah, the mural where, if the listeners are trying to like comprehend what we're talking about here, the mural in Chicago that had Grand Admiral Thrawn looking like Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Bronson.
So we were able to ask him that question. We asked him why Thrawn looked like Pierce Brosnan. He said the reason why he looked like Pierce Brosnan was because he was simply a fan of Pierce Brosnan, and
That's
he
it.
thought he could portray Thrawn.
That's
That's why
awesome.
he looks like Pierce Brosnan, because at the time everyone was like, "Oh my God, they casted Thrawn," and this is how they're telling us who they cast for Thrawn. And of course, yeah, it wasn't Pierce Brosnan. It was, of course,
Well, and Ahsoka and Ventress, I think, were on there too. In, I guess, like a live action adaptation, you could say, because they pulled faces from the actors who portrayed these characters in live action. We hadn't seen Ventress or Ahsoka yet at that point.
Yeah,
he had a lot of interesting things to say about Lucasfilm, and it was crazy to hear how much time he had to make that mural. Like,
Yeah.
he said I forget. I don't know if you remember how many hours he was
I think
awake.
he said he stayed up for like a day or more, 36 hours or something.
I mean, it's
just
beautiful.
constantly.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
he said he sent it, and then he went to bed. He woke up because he remembered something, and he calls, and they were like, they're already printing it. Like, it's already being done.
Yeah, it was already done, but his mind was in the
Yeah,
way.
he
of,
was
like,
already. He was
just-
like, "Oh wait,
yeah.
I want to," and they said it's already on print. Like they're I forget what was it, somewhere in Asia. They said they're already making the giant mural ready for Chicago, so it's done. You can't.
I
do
got to
anything
find
about
that
it.
poster set somewhere. There's got to be something that's got like that
He
same
had him-
effect.
He had the big one, and it was like $120. Like it was.
Yeah.
but it was like, but it's like this. I mean,
Right. It
this
was like a
big, but
banner
then-
style.
It
Yeah.
was huge. Then he also had individual panels of it where you can buy them and you can just kind of make your own. And yeah, he was really nice. His wife was really nice. They were really funny. And just to hear him being like, "Yeah, I called up Doug and he and I are talking," and then I look at David, I'm like, he just dropped Doug Chang's name like it was nothing. Like
Yeah, he
that.
started saying first names of
Oh,
people,
Doug?
and me and like James were like, "You mean Doug Chang?" Yeah, it's like
He
yeah.
was like, "Oh yeah, Doug Chang. Yeah, I called him and we're talking." I'm like looking at his phone. I'm like, "Do you have Doug Chang's phone number in your phone right now?" Like, yeah. So, and he told us some.
And James was like, "Call him. Let's talk to him.
Yeah, let's
Prove
talk
it."
to him. He had some very interesting stories about what was
Yeah.
happening and how the movie was being made, and how he was like, when he did the mural for The Last Jedi, and during that celebration, which I have somewhere, it was a really awesome mural. He said he had a lot of good info, he had a lot of good references, he had a lot of good information from Lucasfilm. When it came time for this one, no one was really talking to him. Nobody was really. He would ask for help, and they would say, "We can't do that. There's way too much stuff for us to be worrying about, to be thinking about this mural." And he said it almost felt like they. Yeah, I don't want to talk trash, but he said it was like they didn't really know what was happening with episode 9, at leading up to Celebration. They still didn't have the script completely ready to go, and even though they were filming, like they were still trying to write the movie.
Yeah, which happens with a lot of
Which does
movies.
happen,
But I
yeah.
mean, with Adam Driver doing his rounds for Ferrari, talking to the media,
Yeah.
he said that
Yeah,
he
wow.
was told one thing at the beginning of the trilogy, and it just kind of morphed and changed in The Last Jedi, and then Rise of Skywalker is completely different. He was supposed to end up being just evil and living. Instead,
I
he
told ya.
turned and became a ghost. Yep, Colin told us.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
but yeah, going back to that potential guest in 2024, we got to talk to him. James flew out from California back to the homeland in San Antonio, and we attended Superhero Comic-Con and Car Show along
It
with
was
Countdown City
amazing.
Geeks. And we had a big booth, but I mean, we had like 20 people up in there at some points, and we were kind of like in the back, me and James, and we were able to give a lot of stuff away, a lot of Star Wars stuff, and we got a lot of YouTube subscribers once they rolled the chance cubes, and they had to roll. I think the rule was you had to roll the same color 3 times in a row. Or
Yeah.
was it 2 times?
No, it was, we changed it to if they got a solid color. Or how many cubes? It was 2 cubes or 1
Yeah,
cube?
2 cubes, the same color.
Oh
3
yeah,
straight times.
if you get it, if you get 2 blues, you have 2 more chances, just 2 more rolls after that
Yeah.
to get the solids. And then if they don't, then it's over. But some people did. They were able to roll 3 in a row of solids, and it was we were just like, how did you do that?
So each day I gave away one of the Kenner TIE fighters, and right as the convention opened, like the 3rd person won that TIE fighter, and it was the kid. And it was like a daughter and a dad, and the dad was like super hyped, and he was like, "Oh my god, get the TIE fighter, get it!" So yeah, that was interesting. We're gonna do it again for SpaceCon and probably Superhero Comic-Con in 2024. It's gonna
I'm
come
excited
back.
for that.
Space Con.
That's really cool.
So
And we're
Superhero Comic-Con happened this year in 2023, and James and I got to talk to Katie Sackhoff behind the curtain,
About tacos.
Yep.
behind the scenes. James had such a long conversation with Katie Sackhoff. At one point, he turned around and we were all gone, and it was just him and Katie talking.
Yeah, it was. I was freaking out, man. I was like, I turn around, I'm looking, I'm like, how come no one else is like? And then I'm looking, and then what's his name's on the stage, like giving her introduction, and she's still talking to me, and I'm like, you gotta go, like you gotta get on the stage here, like 5 seconds. And she was amazing. And then we got to talk to her. Then we also talked to Ming Na Wen, and she was amazing. And I'm like, man, this is so cool. This is so great. And I remember she was running late. I remember she came in like super, super late. But anyways, we still got to talk to her, and that was a lot of fun. That was so cool to be there and to see that. And we had a few people clap for us whenever they said, "Anybody here a Star Wars Stuff podcast fan?" And we had a woo, and David and I were
Nice.
like, who did that?
That's really cool.
James was like, "Who dat?"
So, and then somebody I work with at HEB who I hadn't seen in a few years, she found me later. She goes, "I saw you." Look, I was like, "Oh my gosh, hey, how are you?" And she was like, "I figured you'd be here." Since I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm a big Star Wars fan." So, but the cool thing was Katie Sackhoff talked about how they shot a scene that wasn't in the final movie or in the final episodes of Mando, and she said it's when I pick up the sword, the Darksaber, and she goes, "Does anybody have a Darksaber here?" And of course somebody, "I got a Darksaber," and she brought it up to her, and then she said, "Okay, the moment I ignite it." And then she puts the microphone down, and she held up the Darksaber, and she said, "For Mandalore!" Like yelled it really loud.
That's so cool.
It was awesome, and everybody went nuts for that. And I was like, "This is pretty cool."
That's really cool.
And it's so funny meeting celebrities because you see them like in Mando. Katie Sackhoff's presence in Mando is just like, whoa, like she's a force. Then you see her in real life, you're like, oh my gosh, she's really small. Like it's just the way they film her. I was like, I think I'm the same height as Katie Sackhoff.
There were Oh man, yeah, no, I think this was definitely a year of where I was just like, man, I mean, and every year it is where like I love what I do, but this year just with London and then with the opportunities that we got to where we actually got to talk to some of these people that are on screen was so cool. And there was one where I really wish that Josh was with me. And I had the opportunity to talk to Richard Horvitz that did the voice of Turgle. And
Invader Zim.
yes, and the entire time I was like, man, I wish Josh was here. Just because of
He's a cool guy, apparently.
yeah,
Really cool guy.
that guy just loves Star Wars and he just loves the game and of just that character. And he is interested in coming like playing that character and live action because I didn't know this at the time, but he actually did a decent amount of different motion capture stuff for that game. So he was like actually like wearing stuff for Turgle. So he was doing like the flips and the hops and all that stuff.
Oh,
so I was
sweet.
like, yeah, sign him up. Let's go. I would love to see like Turgle and Cal just show up in season 4 of Mando, and we're just like, okay, what's going on?
That's the dream.
Yes.
Of all the people that he could be with, it's Turgle. You know what I mean? Like that's just the funniest. It's like, what's the
It's
story
Turgle, man.
with why y'all?
Is he gonna pop up on Tanalorr for no reason? Just he somehow made it out there.
Yeah. And then
becomes a
I actually and this year also was like the year of the Clone Wars because I actually talked to a decent amount of Clone Wars actors, and one of them that we had a really nice interview with was TC Carson, who played the voice of Mace Windu. And that was a very surreal experience. Like of just talking to these actors is fantastic. But when you actually I sometimes lose myself in the interview. Like I'm still doing it. It's all professional, but like I'm just talking. I'm like, I'm talking to someone that I listened to as a kid, and it's just a surreal experience. So this is definitely a great platform to be part of if you're a Star Wars fan, because you are living your childhood dream. Like you are just continuing that, and you've got a great platform to do it. So I'm very thankful to be doing this stuff, because it's Star Wars. It's awesome.
Very awesome.
Well said.
Yeah, going back to Celebration 2023, Colin and I actually got to meet Andy Serkis. We took a picture with him, and Colin did his Gollum impersonation.
You pushed me to do it, and I'm so glad you did, because he stepped back.
So look, here's Andy Serkis. Here's Colin. Colin went like this and did the impersonation right in his face. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. Oh my
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, he like took a step back and was like, oh my gosh, that was fantastic. That was one of the best I've heard. And he shook my hand, and I was like, oh my God. And then I totally forgot we were taking a picture, and then we were like, oh yeah, that's right. But yeah, no.
That's amazing.
That was just incredible.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah, we took that
So cool.
picture, and we also got a picture with Hayden and Ewan, and Ewan had that rule that we couldn't get close to him. They put R2D2 in between us, and he was shooting something in Europe, and it was like a restriction.
Weird. His like beard was kind of long.
Yeah.
And that's where he did the yell, right? That was where he did the yell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Howard
when
Bean
he was
yell.
on stage, yeah.
So,
May the force be with you.
yeah, that's in our intro now. So I also met Rosario Dawson.
Yep.
Which was awesome, meeting her in person for the first time, seeing her up close. Very, very striking. It was like I was very starstruck with her. I got to take a picture with her, and I got her autograph as well. Very, very nice, very down to earth, very cool. Also, I'm looking at all my pictures on the wall.
Giancarlo
Esposito.
I was saying, I'm doing the same too. I'm looking up at the wall.
Giancarlo Esposito. He's done so many conventions around me. Never met him in person. The first time I got to meet him was in London. He was super cool. Hung out with him for a long time because when I was getting his autograph, he was talking to each individual person for a while, and they were telling them their Giancarlo stories. And he took his time signing stuff. and looking at things and talking to
Yeah.
all the fans there. It was a pretty cool interaction. But
amazing.
I knew he was great, so I knew that was going to happen. Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh,
I was
Yes,
getting-
I remember that too.
I was getting Andy Serkis's autograph. I turn around once that was done. I look over. Mads Mikkelsen is sitting by himself at his autograph table. No line. No, it was just him, like just sitting there. And I'm like, I'm gonna go talk to Mads Mikkelsen. So I just go walk up to him, and I kind of played dumb, and I'm like, Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. And he's like, Hey, I'm not signing autographs right now, but if you come back, I'm like, Oh, you're doing autographs? Okay, how do I get that done? And he's like, Well, you go to this website, and the convention Wi-Fi is not that great. So I was like this, and I was just like there hanging out with him. And I was talking to his manager, his handler, whoever. And yeah, we just had like a conversation. And during that conversation, I was like, I'm talking to Mads Mikkelsen, and everyone's just
Yeah,
like
it's-
walking around us. And it's like, does no one see that Mads Mikkelsen is just right
does
here?
he sound that cool all the time? Like that.
He sounds like Mads Mikkelsen.
that is insane.
Awesome.
It didn't sound any different.
No
I mean,
man
awesome.
should have a voice as amazing as Mads Mikkelsen does. Like that, I don't understand. Like when he starts talking, I'm just like, that's a good sounding voice.
He loved when he was at Celebration. He was talking all the time about Indiana Jones, which is pretty funny.
Yes.
He was
So,
great
yeah,
in
those-
Indiana
yeah.
Jones.
Yeah, I think those were all my interactions with celebrities at Celebration, and
That's
of
a pretty
course,
solid list.
yeah. I mean, it was a very expensive list too. Because, yeah, those autographs and the pictures. But I mean, you figure with everything in life, everything's just going to get that much more expensive. I know someone in here had a comment about how much it cost to meet Katie at Superhero Comic Con. I think it was $80 for an autograph, or maybe it was
that's not
$80 for.
No.
No, it was $80 for a photo and $120 for an autograph on something that was Star Wars specific. And I think our prices have gone up for SpaceCon, which will be there. Hopefully, we might be able to swing something. But
I know Josh and I are going to be at MegaCon in the beginning of February. And there's something called it's called Mosh Isley, and I've heard nothing but great things from our friends like Christian and Hunter and all of them. So I'm very excited for that. And then you've got Motor City Comic Con that I'll be there for that, and I think Zach might go to that one maybe.
There's a solid chance. I can't remember what weekend that falls on, if it was Chicago or Motor City that was in April. Maybe I'm thinking something different.
I
Is it
think
in
you're
May?
thinking of C2E2.
Oh, C2E2. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because Motor City's on the weekend of my birthday, and then you got August, which is Dragon Con, and I'm so pumped for that, and that will be Josh's first time going to that one, and I've been doing that. What?
Time to drink.
Yes. Yeah, that con, I tell people, is costumes, drinking, and partying for 5 days straight. That's exactly what that
It's
con
quite
is.
the bender.
Sounds like
Dang.
my every
Well,
Friday night.
the costumes are just fantastic, so I'm super pumped, and I am debuting a couple of costumes for next year.
Oh, you want to tell us?
Nope, you'll have to wait.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, but yeah, no, and then October is when the superhero
SpaceCon.
SpaceCon.
SpaceCon's October, I believe.
This is not
end of
good
October.
advertising on my part. Sorry. Cool. Yes.
Yeah,
And then Zach and I will be there for that one because we'll fly out for that one. So
for sure.
there's a lot of stuff happening. Next year conventions, and then we've got Skeleton Crew, we've got Acolyte, we've got season 3 of the Bad Batch, we got Tales of the Jedi season 2, and then hopefully still Star Wars Outlaws.
Yeah.
And then possibly Star Wars Hunters. But I really doubt it. But if that happens, it'd be great because I played that demo almost 3 years ago now. So
Wow.
I'm just glad we got Jedi Survivor this year.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for me. I literally
Josh and
played
I
that
weren't happy.
nonstop for like 4 days.
It's a good one.
And it was.
Hey, that
it
looks
was-
familiar, Colin.
Yes, it does. Before I get to that explanation, I know Josh and I were hoping to play Jedi Survivor before we went to Celebration, and then they pushed it back.
Just getting delayed. I'm like, bruh.
Yeah. And we were just like, oh man, and I even got a day off specifically for that release date. So then I was like, great. And at that point, it was too late to cancel it. So I was like, okay, cool. I just got a random day off now. Great.
Just gotta stare at my TV all
Just
day.
play Fallen Order.
Yeah. But Zach actually pulled through, and you went to a GameStop, and then they were like, hey, we are going to throw this out. And you're like, all right, I'll take it. And he got some Jedi Survivor, like different posters and kind of promotion art that was specific for GameStop. And then, he was very nice and gave it to me. And so now I've got it here in the studio. Right next to my Galaxy's Edge poster signed by all the people I worked with.
It's kind of crazy what stuff you could get for free when you go and just ask about it. Because I got a picture of a Spider-Man 2 sign I got to show you guys, because that's what I was going for with Spider-Man 2 stuff. He's like, oh, we can't give that away yet, but I got this Jedi Survivor stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm sure I could find a home. Twist my arm, why don't you? I'll take it off your hands. But I got this crazy, awesome Spider-Man 2 sign that I could like hang from my ceiling once I get this echoey room refinished.
We were gonna throw it away anyway. Here you go.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, I ran into a cool manager at a movie theater the other day who gave me some Dungeons and Dragons promotional art I gave to my brother for Christmas. So that was pretty sweet.
That thing was in our office since that movie came out, and we were just trying to get rid of it, and no one was taking it. And then I was like, you know what? Zach's a nerd. So
dude, I'm in.
It's not small, guys. This thing was taller than Zach, so I just handed it to him, and then Zach just walked out of the theater.
Walked out.
And he was wearing Christmas pajamas, and I just remember just seeing other guests walk in, and they were like, "What the heck is going on?"
It's a good day.
But yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome.
Yep.
But
oh man, but yeah, for next year for Star Wars, I'm excited for it. And if you haven't yet, I would definitely look into at least some of the High Republic comics and novels. I personally don't have that much time to read, so I use Audible, and it works fantastic. And they also have some music in the background, and like the lightsaber sounds and the blasters and stuff like that when you're listening to on Audible. So I would definitely listen to those books. Now, it's very hard to kind of keep up of what goes like before what, just because of the order is just kind of confusing. Because the phases aren't actually correct. It's not like in phase 1, all of these are like, in order, and then you go to the next one. It's like there's like a book in phase 2, which is technically the first one, and then you got a book in phase 3 that is like right after the first one, and you're just really confused.
It's like Star Wars.
Yes, but more complicated.
Release in chronological order is a foreign concept to Star Wars.
Yep.
And as one of our users has been saying, we don't have any movies next year.
Nope.
We do have a show.
We have shows, but we don't have a movie next year.
And that's a very, very shocking low light, I think, for Star Wars, is that we didn't have a movie this year, and we're not going to have a movie next year, but we'll have 2 movies in 2026, allegedly.
So
that's
almost 7 years without a movie.
You've done it before.
Weird. But
no,
but you don't understand. I'm just kidding. But no, like once Disney, came in and they did their thing, and we got 2015, 2016, 2017, 2019. I was like, oh my goodness, my life is set, from now on. Like I'm gonna get a Star Wars movie every year, pretty much. It hasn't happened.
You were like, move over, Jesus.
Yeah.
Star Wars took over.
Like,
and it was crazy. I went, because I'm on I get this look back at like last year and the year before on time hop, and it's always funny to be like, man, I saw The Last Jedi on December 26th back in 2017, like right after Christmas with my in-laws. They were like, what do we got to do tomorrow? And I was like, we go watch Star Wars if you want. And so we all went to go see Star Wars. And I remember I wore my
Yeah.
pajamas. I wore, I was like, this is, and the theater was packed. Everybody was cheering in the movie theater. And I was like,
Awesome.
this is the best.
Say what you will about the sequels. The trailers and Force Friday and all that stuff was just
amazing.
Fantastic. I remember getting that first teaser trailer for Force Awakens, and it was back in 2014, and I thought it was fake. I didn't think it was real because ever since they like announced that people were coming up with like fan trailers and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you just hear Andy Serkis like say, "There's been an awakening," and you're like, "Wait, what?"
Whoa.
And then you get the Falcon like doing a flip in the sand, and you're like, "What's going on?" It's like Star Wars, and it's like it's back. And then you go all the way to 2015 and the new trailers, and especially the trailer at Star Wars Celebration 2015 was insane. So it's just
That's the greatest trailer ever. That is the greatest trailer of all time, in my opinion.
So good.
It's up there.
The
that
trailer
one
for Rise of
like up there.
The trailer for Rise of Skywalker was actually pretty good.
Was that an important place to be in Chicago, Colin?
Oh,
was that panel important?
Oh yeah. Was it?
Is it a big deal? Is it a big deal we're here?
I just
got
remember
3 people I know who would kill to be in this seat,
and we got in there. Chris, Joseph, and I just sprinted. We took that chance of not seeing it on the screen, and we somehow got in. And I just remembered just sitting like, I'm just sitting next to everyone in our group, and I was just like, I can't believe we're here. And then Stephen Colbert just comes out on stage, and we're like, Colbert, and we're like, what's going on? And oh man, no, I love Star Wars. It's just so great. It's just fantastic, and I just love how it brings people together.
I will say, I know I spoke about it at the beginning, but when I went to go see Return of the Jedi in theaters this year, it was really cool because for one, the theater was pretty packed, and I was like, okay, Star Wars, and I think it was like it made the top 10 of the box office that week it was out. And I just remember people cheering whenever, oh geez.
I thought the same thing.
Jazz.
Get out of here.
Jets. It's called Jets now. But no, whenever the movie, whenever Hayden Christensen showed up at the end of Return of the Jedi, everybody cheered. Everybody clapped.
Isn't that weird, man?
I was like, oh,
it's
like a different.
I thought we hated this guy,
and it almost brought a tear to my eye because I was like, this is amazing. And then and everybody clapped when it was over, and I was like, oh my! After 40 years, that this movie still gets people pumped.
Dude, it was awesome.
Such a great feeling, and that
was good.
And I walked out of there thinking, man, I'm so glad I got to see this in theaters.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought this up, James, because what happened? Did the OT guys just like quit going to Star Wars stuff and quit liking? Did they die off? I mean, what happened?
I think. I don't know. I think it was just.
You think they turned?
I think over time, I think people looked at what. I think what happened was people are seeing what the movies that are coming out now, and how sequels are being made, and how, not saying Star Wars the sequel trilogy, but movies in general, of how they are continuing their story. And I think a lot of people are looking back at the prequels, like, holy crap, George Lucas did something insane.
He was cooking.
That nobody understood, almost like how he did 1977 with A New Hope. I mean, but then when A New Hope came out, everybody got it. But with the prequels, I think people were still trying to figure out what happened. But then now, in retrospect, you look back at those 3 movies and you're like, good grief, man. George Lucas did something absolutely incredible with these 3 movies. To make 3 movies that are nothing like the ones that came before. 3
and it's not
movies.
Just the story either. Like, you have to think, like, he had to find dreamers and people who were going to pave the future of cinema, because you have all of these practical effects that were not really being used at the time, like as much as they should have. And I just remember watching the Light and Magic documentary, and it
Yeah.
was just, oh my god, like they went through so much more than I thought they did.
Yeah.
And Star Wars just paved the future for like the entire industry. Just think about how different the world would be if Star Wars never existed. If George Lucas
Yeah.
wasn't like, hey, I've got all these studios telling me no. You know what? I'm not going to do it. Like, could you imagine how different like our world would be if George Lucas never made Star Wars? It would be insane.
Yeah,
Completely insane.
It's really
We'd
shocking
be talking about
how
Star Trek.
brave
Ugh.
he was to say that, to say this is how he was pretty much told, this is how movies are made. Movies are made like this. This is how you
Right.
do this effect. This is how you do this effect. And he was like, no, there has to be a better way. There has to be a different way to do this. And then you flash forward to 1990. Hell, he started writing that in 94 with episode 1, 94,
Yes.
95. And then the
And
production
they started filming in
begins-
1997.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even then they're looking at John Knoll, that famously says, we really don't have an idea on how to do the majority of this, but we're gonna give our best. And George Lucas was kind of like, this is what I
Right.
want, and you are gonna do that for me.
So really fun fact that that actually they tested a lot of the digital aspect and all that stuff in the Young Indiana Jones
Yes.
series. And I remember watching that, and then I saw that I remember watching that for the first time, and George Lucas was attached to it, and then I was like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible. And then I was like, this is pretty good for a show at the time, and it was the first time they were using that specifically for yeah. So no, I was blown away. And the fact that we are where we are now, and of just technology and everything, it's finally caught up. So I can't wait to see where it goes, because there's so much more stories to tell. There's so many more characters to see. And I think it's kind of gone beyond of what George Lucas really pictured of what Star Wars was going to be. Because he had the plan of doing 9 films, and he did pitch the sequels to them, and I'm just curious of what it would be like if George Lucas actually went through and he did those other 3 films, like of how different things would be.
Here's an interesting topic. Maybe you'll understand. So back in the day when Star Wars first came out, George Lucas said it's going to be 12 movies, and then he said, just kidding, it's going to be 9 movies.
Yeah.
And then this episode is actually episode, I forget where he had 4, what we know as 4. He had that somewhere on the timeline. And episode 9 was the fall of the Emperor. That was going to be the finale, was the fall of the Emperor. And he always did intend to go back and tell the prequels. And then he changes all that. He gets rid of all that. And then he starts doing 1, 2, and 3. And then he starts doing Clone Wars. He brings back Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, because now we know there was this draft of 7, 8, and 9 where Darth Maul was supposed to be the villain.
Right.
Yes.
When did he rewrite 7, 8, and 9? That's a question I don't know. And I really want to know, when did George Lucas redo his 7, 8, and 9 stories? Because I guarantee you that was not what he had in mind back in 1977.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And don't forget that Jar Jar Binks was like the key to all this.
But anyways, okay. So a lot of our people are asking about Rebel Moon. I have not seen it.
I haven't
seen it either.
Critics are literally destroying this movie. I think a lot of people want Zack Snyder to quit directing movies. Somebody I know saw it, and he said it was pretty much the 7 Samurai and in space, and which made me laugh, because then people were like, they're like, it's like A Bug's Life, and I'm like, A Bug's Life. Like,
I've never heard that comparison before. That is
I'm
insane.
like
Big Mama's House too.
Okay.
They were like, this movie's just like A Bug's Life. And I'm like, well, A Bug's Life is all, it's like when people are like, Lion King is a lot like Shakespeare. And I'm like, anyway.
Bro.
So,
So
so I
I
wonder
think
if George
something.
Lucas, oh,
Yeah.
go for it. Go for it.
All right. So I think something that people really don't realize is that you've got the film, The Creator, that came out this year, right? And then you got Rebel Moon. Both of those were very Star Wars based scripts, and the Creator was something you honestly could tell if you watch the movie, you're like, I know who the Empire is, I know who the Rebel Alliance was supposed to be. It was very similar to that. And then you've got Rebel Moon, which is a canceled script. Well, it was a script that he pitched to Lucasfilm, and they were like, no. Which
Yeah, I
I'm
think
really curious.
we talked about that a little bit before you joined, Colin. But the
Yeah.
other part of the story I didn't mention was Zack Snyder specifically spoke with Kathleen Kennedy, and he said, "Hey, I want to make an R-rated Star Wars film." And Kathleen Kennedy was like, "Nope, ain't happening." And Zack Snyder didn't want to budge, so that's why he left. I think that's what ended up happening because George
Okay.
Lucas recruited Zack Snyder.
Hmm.
So we would have had a Zack Snyder film if he would have just simply said, "Okay, I'll make a PG-13 version." But and the irony is he did it for Netflix because there's going to be like a hard R-rated version of Rebel Moon released next year.
Easy.
So it's
I'm
like
just kidding.
Thing I've ever heard.
That's
It's like
nuts.
He made a movie and he was like, but there's another version. It's like, then just release the other version. Like, you know what I mean? The whole
He's done that
Snyder-
for so many of his films, though.
the Snyder
That's
cut
true.
worked because we didn't see that movie before. We saw the Joss Whedon Justice League. That's why there's a Snyder
Ugh.
cut. You mean to tell me that Zack Snyder made a movie and then he also said, but there's a Snyder cut to this movie? And people are like,
and he said the studio didn't interfere with this movie at all. So
Dang.
so why did he?
I don't know.
The fact that he's
Very
like,
interesting.
there's a Snyder cut to the Snyder cut. Just letting you know. If Filoni directed the exact same thing, would it get the same hate? I mean, there's a lot of factors to think about. If Filoni had done this movie, one, he would have tied more Star Wars into it. I mean, it's a Star Wars movie. That's the dumbest thing I've ever said. But no, he would have connected it a lot more, and there would have been a lot of lore there with it. And also, I think he would have respected the fact that Star Wars is for 12-year-olds sometimes. And I think he would have made sure that everybody can go and watch this movie. So I think Filoni would have done something quite different with what this script was. So that's my opinion. But yeah, but I think if Filoni were attached, I don't think it would get the same hate because I think people would trust him more than Snyder. But yeah, now I got to watch it because I want to see because I've heard, like I said, I've heard some people say it's the dumbest thing they've ever seen. And I've heard other people say it was okay. So I'm like, oh, I don't know.
I haven't heard anyone say it's great.
I haven't heard
That's the
anybody
thing.
say it's
Okay.
great. I've heard people say it was decent.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's just, I think the thing is, and this was kind of my thought process with the Creator, is that first off, it was a very beautiful film in the visual effects department. Like, that movie was stunning, right? Now, I will say it was trying to be something that it couldn't be. And the entire time I was watching it, I was like, it's trying to be a Star Wars movie. It's 100% trying to be a Star Wars movie, and it can't be that. And that's why I was just like, it was good, but it wasn't great. And that's the same probably with Rebel Moon, is that you know the story behind it, and now you can't get that out of your head. So when you're watching it, you're like, this is trying to be Star Wars. This is absolutely trying to be Star Wars. And I think that's kind of like that might be the turnoff for people for it. Again, I can't make any judgment till I watch it because I haven't watched it yet. But after that, I'll get back to you guys.
I'm nervous about what this does for future science fiction movies now, because these are two big movies that were pretty hyped. The Creator and Rebel Moon,
Right.
non-Star Wars movies that came out in the same year, and both did not perform well. Both were not well liked.
Right.
What is this going to do for the future of science fiction, and what is this going to do for, say, Star Wars in the next couple of years? Will they be able to bring those audiences back in, or is everybody going to be like, oh no, it's It's gonna be like all the other science fiction movies.
Yeah. Is all sci-fi going to be rejected Star Wars pitches?
Kind of, maybe. I mean, I think all the pardon the pun creators out there, they there's a certain group of them that yes, they do want to do a Star Wars thing, but then there's also another group that says I want to stay away from Star Wars, keep that thing away from me because of all the fan backlash. If it doesn't work, they're scared of it. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. But the conversation I think we had at the beginning of the podcast is what probably needs to happen if Star Wars really wants to get back into I think the good graces of the fans in general is make these films for a super low budget, pretty much go Blumhouse on some of these Star Wars ideas and concepts. There's a lot of fan films, like I've always been saying, the fan film is going to catch up to what Lucasfilm can create. And it's probably going to happen this decade. I mean, we're only going to be in 2024, and you look at the creator was shot on like a $3,500 camera. I mean, someone could take out a bank loan and buy it, and get that thing rolling. I kind of have this fantasy of the 501st Legion that I'm a part of and Colin's a part of, banding together. We put all of our resources together and make our own Star Wars trilogy.
That would be amazing.
I mean, I think it could rival at this very moment what Lucasfilm is doing. But of course, I mean, it's a certain skill you need for writing, and then the whole production value. I mean, lighting is something that's super important, sound, audio. But I think we have those guys in the Legion, so it's just one of those things. I think all big empires fall, and I think we might be in that time frame, and I think Star Wars might have to morph into something new. 2026 is going to be a very, very important look at Colin. 2026 is going to be a very important year. If those two movies don't work, where do they go from there?
Okay. I mean, here's the thing, though. Star Wars is timeless, right? You have to think that you had that gap from 1983 all the way to 1999 with no big Star Wars projects. And look where we are now. It got so big after the prequels and the Clone Wars. We didn't have any. I think the last thing from until 2015 of Force Awakens, like that actually came on the big screen, was the Clone Wars movie back in 2008. So you have to think that Star Wars has not survived, but thrived, in my opinion, to get to that point because of the excellent storytelling that has happened. Dave Filoni is to me, is kind of like the heir to the throne. He worked directly with George Lucas. He is the embodiment of what Star Wars is. And honestly, just having Dave Filoni involved in all these projects, I don't think, an empire will fall. I think it's just going to keep rising. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And 2024 is a great example. Like, yes, there's not that many projects as it happened of this past year or the year prior, but I guarantee you it's still going to bring so many people in. You have the new age of the High Republic, the Acolyte happening, on screen again. And it's an era that not that many people know about unless you read the books, and not everyone reads books. So it's going to be a very exciting time for that, for the Jedi. It's going to be so cool. So I don't really think about that kind of stuff just because of Star Wars is timeless. It to me, it really doesn't die off. If that makes sense.
Well, I was referencing more like the box office, because they've already done this where they released 2 films in 6 months apart, and Solo kind of took the brunt of that, and they just made $500 million, which is nothing to scoff at, but that's how much they spent on that film with like marketing and budget and everything, and it just broke even. We mentioned that in the podcast. So is this going to be any different? I mean, we have the 7 years, like James said, but once we get that big movie again on the scene and everyone's hyped about Star Wars, is it going to be a little bit too much dropping another film in the same year? And then if that doesn't do what the studio heads and all the investors are expecting, they're going to be like, oh, well, we need to wait years before we drop Star Wars films, which is totally the wrong strategy, I think. I think you can do one movie every Christmas or one movie every other Christmas. I think that would be fine. But the more you think about it and the more you process it and talk it out, it feels like it's just they're a part of Disney, and that doesn't help because Disney has other properties they have to drop, like Avatar. That's a big
Yeah.
moneymaker. Those movies keep on making billions of dollars, and they're gonna want that by itself. This would have been a perfect year for a Star Wars film because
There's
what was the
nothing-
competition? Aquaman 2? I mean, that flopped. I
They
mean,
didn't even
even
have- they
without
didn't
a
have a
Star
red
Wars
carpet.
film.
Wow. Okay. Just okay.
Yeah. I mean, Aquaman 2, you had Godzilla -1, which was terrific, but there's no marketing behind it. So a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't go check it out, and it was not from a studio, well-known studio. So that's a great film everyone needs to see, but nobody went to go see it. I didn't go. Me personally, I didn't even go to a movie theater this Christmas. This is like one of the first Christmases in forever. I didn't. I wanted to go to the cinema, but my family couldn't decide on what movie they wanted to watch. My kids are older too, so that was a factor. But there was nothing that was like an overwhelmingly yes, we need to go and share this experience. And Star Wars is that franchise. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's for the family. It's for everyone. I mean, it's a weird time right now, and 2025 is going to be exactly the same because there's not going to be another Star Wars film in theaters, and we're just going to wonder, okay, what is May 2026 going to bring us? So
Yeah,
that's kind of the precarious situation that I think Star Wars is in, film wise.
I will say is interesting for someone that actually works at a movie theater because there's not that many films where and I do love movies. I wouldn't be working at a movie theater if I didn't. And it was just very interesting because I was just like, huh. Here's the next movie. Not really interested in this one. Here's the next one. Not really. I was intrigued by the creator. I went and saw that one, but I'm not going into the theater every weekend and watching a movie. Just because of I just feel like there haven't been really any kind of to me like there hasn't been real stoppers of where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is intrigued. I'm hooked. When you got Star Wars, it's got this reputation. And again, going back to 2015, it was like, oh my gosh, Star Wars is back. This is crazy. And then you have the events of The Last Jedi. Things change. People don't go see Solo. Yes, because it might be too soon, but it was because people didn't want to be disappointed again from The Last Jedi. And then you have Rise of Skywalker, and it was trying to kind of hold everything together and kind of go back on what The Last Jedi was doing. And then you just didn't have a movie after that. And then the shows took over. So coming back to the cinema with Star Wars it's got to be a big thing. It's definitely got to bring people in with that first trailer. That first trailer has to bring in non-Star Wars fans, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That first May Star Wars movie I'm telling you, is the Dave Filoni movie because that has to have you have to have Grogu on your poster. You have to have Ahsoka.
Yes.
You have to have Mando.
Yeah. Luke Skywalker.
That's gotta get your people.
Whoa,
back.
that Luke Skywalker on that poster
Dude, that'd be
with Grogu.
a slam dunk, huh?
Hey,
Yeah.
there he goes. He's doing it. He's doing it. But
I know.
but yeah, that's that's this May 2026 Star Wars movie is going to be the Dave Filoni big meetup
so
movie.
excited.
And
That was another big event this year, 2023. Dave Filoni was promoted to creative. What's the title?
Creative
CCO?
Chief Creative Officer.
Yeah, CCO.
Yeah.
Chief
And rightfully
Creative
so,
Officer.
right? I think we all believe that this was, I mean, to me, it seemed like it was a little bit of a long time coming because I've been following Dave Filoni for quite some time, and it sounds like a lot of us here have as well. And it's just awesome to see that. I guess gives me more faith to trust the writing process of these movies and just making sure that the right people talk to the right people and that the vision is put together.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Dave
and the
Filoni is the heir to the
difference,
throne.
the difference is now that Dave Filoni is CCO, he actually has input into Andor season 2, and Tony Gilroy kind of has to answer to him a little bit, or maybe the
That's going
creatives
to
on
be
the team.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is that dynamic going to offer?
Throw in the ghost crew. I'm just
Well,
kidding. That'd be a
Well,
lot.
no. Here's the thing. That's probably going to happen. You will probably see some type of Harrison Dula cameo in some way, because you have to think that the events of Andor are leading up to Rogue One. You do have you have Chopper and the Ghost show up in Rogue One. It
For
would
sure.
to me it would make sense to have them at least to have a cameo, just because they were part of the Rebel Alliance. They did
Mhm.
help form the Rebel Alliance. It would make sense to have those characters at least show up and make some cameo. I know people would just be fine if Chopper even just came by the screen again and was like, whoa,
Blew
whoa, whoa, whoa,
some
whoa,
up,
whoa.
killed a
Yeah,
ton of
like-
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Performed mass
Mass
murder.
genocide.
Yeah.
Well, how crazy would
War
it be
crimes, Chopper.
if you think about like some crazy scene in Rebels where like Zeb and Ezra are trying to get Melu runs or something, I don't know, whatever, and then you like pan the camera over, they're fighting each other like brothers do, and then you see Cassian Andor like as like a rebel spy, like trying to go on some secret mission at the same
I am
time.
telling you, not having Zeb and Ahsoka. Not having Zeb and Ahsoka was a mistake. I think having him not make a cameo was just like, why not? You like teased him in Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah, especially since they threw him in there.
Right. And Ahsoka was pretty much season 5 of Star Wars Rebels. So I was just like, why would you not have Zeb? Why on earth would you not have him at least even hear his voice in one of the X-Wings? Because we know he's a pilot right now. And he also knows Carson.
It would have been
We
sweet
saw
if he
him
was with
hang out with
Carson.
him. Yeah, so I'm just like, why not?
Yeah, when
And
they're
I
looking
just
for
thought
Ahsoka
that-
in the water, if
Cost too
Zeb
much.
was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Over
He did
budget.
look really, really good when we saw him in Mando 3. He was awesome.
I know. I was just so sad.
Saving
not
him for the
seeing him in
film.
Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And I'm gonna be in that movie. Just letting everybody know I'm gonna.
No, okay. Well,
Yeah, the other big news in 2023 was James became an actor in Hollywood.
yes.
No.
Yeah.
Knock it off.
He's like, no.
So James was in a film, and I went to that film festival, and I saw James on screen. And my wife went with me, and she turned to me and she said, "Is that how James really is?" I said, "No, he's acting." But yeah, James is a really great actor.
Yes.
I gotta tell the
Yeah.
world about James. He's really good, and he
You're gonna make
looks
me
pretty
cry.
good on screen. He looks like
You
he
guys
looks
should
like
see
an
his
actor.
short films. Yeah,
His
no,
beard game
no.
is strong.
James, I don't know if I've told you this in person, but I've seen a couple of your short films, and you are good. You know what you're doing, and I'm not sitting there. I'm like, oh, it's James. It's like, oh, it's a character. Like that's kind of hard to kind of watch other friends become actors because you're like, oh, like that's my friend James. But when you act, it's like you're playing a whole character. I can't even see your personality in it. Like it's just like you are playing the part. So
Well, I
Oh,
appreciate
no.
it. I appreciate it.
oh no, it's just all your friends being nice.
Yeah,
This must
I
be a
know. I
terrible
don't- I
time
don't-
for you. Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like it. Let's just change the subject back to Star Wars, please.
So one of my favorite podcasts that I used to watch and listen to is a video podcast back in the day on Revision 3, back in the early 2010s. There's a podcast called The Totally Rad Show. So there was 3 guys that would talk about movies, and they would talk in front of a green screen. They would show the trailer behind them. There's 3
nice.
close friends, and one was from Dig Nation. The other one was like one of the friends, and then the other one was another friend that they just like met. And then one of those friends ended up being Dan Trachtenberg, the director of Prey and Cloverfield Lane. Yeah. He made a short while he was in the podcast for Portal, and that's what got him noticed. And then that's when he became the director we all kind of know now. So what I'm saying is James Herrera could be the Dan Trachtenberg of the podcast.
Oh, jeez.
So
we get to
for
go to
everyone
the
that doesn't know,
premiere.
James lives in Hollywood, like literal Hollywood, California, not Hollywood,
okay.
Texas. He looks
That's a
out his
thing?
window and sees the Hollywood sign outside of his window.
Some almost, yeah.
Yeah, if you stand on
I can see the
your tiptoes,
Netflix
whatever.
Rebel. I can see the giant Rebel moon banner they have on the building right there. Like it's But,
Your new favorite movie, man. I'm excited for
I
you.
know, right? Yeah, I'm excited. But anyways, back to Star Wars.
Back to 2023 Star Wars. So, what
Yes.
was another big thing that happened this year?
I guess the Mandalorian season 3 coming out. I know we mentioned it here and there, but we really haven't talked about it for a couple of minutes.
I don't want to ask this question, but that
Then
was
don't.
this year.
Just kidding. Yes,
Yeah.
that was early this year. That was, well, I think Bad Batch season 2 was beforehand, and I think they overlapped a couple weeks. It was, or Mando was first, and it overlapped with Bad Batch. But I think Bad Batch was before Mando season 3, and they overlapped for a couple of weeks.
Mando season 3, like the back half of Mando. There's like 3 episodes in that I was just like, what are y'all doing? Like, come on. The last episode was amazing, and like the first 2 episodes were amazing. And then
I think that episode before the last one was also pretty great. Which I got a fun story for that, because I was on the show floor over at Star Wars Celebration, and because we got to go to the, we had the opportunity of going to the Lucasfilm panel. We got access to go see the second to last episode of The Mandalorian before the rest of the world.
Right,
I think like a week before, and I went and I was like, I don't have a Paz Vizsla Black Series figure yet, so I was like, cool, I'll get this one. And as I'm holding it and I'm watching the episode, you just see him get killed, and I'm like,
spoilers.
I just come on, because the same thing happened to me when I finally got the Lego Razor Crest in season 2 of Mando, and then it just blew up, and I was about to chuck my set like out the window. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? It's no longer canon." Great, so yeah, no.
All those toy makers I know were super pissed. I guarantee they were like, "Really?"
Hasbro had some words.
They were like, "Oh, come on."
Tate Fletcher was also a great person that we had the opportunity of talking to, and that was a very fun experience because he is also a big Star Wars fan, and you really saw the passion in his fandom when we were talking to him. So that was also a very fun opportunity.
Yeah, a lot of different guests we had. Other than Tate Fletcher, I'm trying to remember, who did we speak to? I want to say we spoke to Josh Robert Thompson, but I think that was the year prior.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big changes we made, we spoke with Chris Bartlett, who he was really awesome. And I think that was towards the end of one of the shows. But he was, I got to meet him in person at a convention and got to really speak with him. And he's a really cool person. I think he's down to come back on the podcast in 2024. And
that was a fun one.
Yeah, he is the protocol droid for all the shows. So he's a guy they call up on, just like Leilani Shu, just like I'm blanking out here. Leilani, Chris Bartlett, Misty Rosas. We haven't had her on the podcast yet. And I talked to Chris Bartlett about Misty Rosas, and we've tried to get her on the podcast, but her representation has not gotten back with me, and I just kind of gave up on it. And then Chris Bartlett was like, just talk to her directly, because her agent is my agent. That the person you've been emailing me is the person that represents me. So just talk to her directly, funny. And she'll come on the show. So yeah, that's probably going to happen, because I love Quill from season 1 of Mando.
Oh yeah.
And she was also Frog Lady as well.
Yep.
And she's got a huge history in Hollywood, playing different
she's
characters.
Been around. Yeah, she's acted in a lot of movies that I didn't know about. And then
also,
you had Zach and Retro Ray talk to a fun character, the Master Skywalker. Yeah,
Ross. He's a cool dude. Ross Speedman, very fantastic guy.
Yeah, and if you follow him on social media, he came to the States for the first time. And he went to Jacksonville. He went to a Jaguars game for the NFL, and I think he had a lot of fun in the States for the first time. And I think he's trying to become a professional MMA fighter or
yes, he is
semi-pro fighter. So yeah, that's a very interesting thing, and we're trying to get him to go to SpaceCon. I was talking to Bob and trying to get him to fly him over and get that whole thing going. So yeah, SpaceCon is going to be a big thing coming up in October in
I'm
2024
excited for that one.
because
Yeah.
hopefully everyone on this podcast right now, James, Colin, and Zach,
I will be there.
here.
I will be
And
there.
I got stuff booked for Hayden. I'm
He's like,
there.
I'm
Yes.
already there. What are you talking about?
I'm counting down the days.
so yeah, there's a lot to look forward to in 2024, but a couple more things that happened in 2023. We did a huge giveaway for the next HasLab project, and
Oh yeah.
it happened to be that it was one of our patrons. So we drew from probably the biggest pool of people that
Yeah.
I think we've ever had for any giveaway, and we decided to give away the HasLab, and there's a picture of it right there for watching us on YouTube.
Very nice.
That was a big one.
And yeah, it's not going to get shipped until next year around this time. But once that happens, yeah, we'll send it to Nathan, who won the big giveaway for HasLab. And we're looking to do
know-
more giveaways in the new year. We know it's going to be a little bit slower. We don't have the proper announcement dates for Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, which should have come out this year. We should have been talking about that. But going back to the live shows, the Ahsoka pre-show and post-show podcasts that we did were a big hit. We had a lot of people listen to the podcast at that point, and
Wait till
everyone
Skeleton
enjoyed it.
Crew, Wait until the shows.
And once the next show comes on, we're probably going to do the same thing, a pre-show and a post-show,
for sure.
and then kind of go over and analyze the show the next day. Me and Colin were doing those for Ahsoka. So
Yeah.
lots to look forward to. Unfortunately, we did have a lot of untimely people passing away here. I know the big one here was Ray Stevenson, who
Yeah.
portrayed Gar Saxon in Rebels and in Clone Wars, and of course the new fan favorite character Baylan Skoll in Ahsoka. He was just 58 years old, guys, and he passed away, and it was not expected apparently, and I don't think we have any details on what actually happened. But I'll go through the list of people that passed that were Star Wars, either in the films, comics, books. So it's a pretty long list actually. Applebrook portrayed a neighbor in Andor. This person was 91 years old. Nicholas Kepros, who portrayed Lorth Nita in the Empire Strikes Back radio drama. Paul Grant, who was an Ewok in Return of the Jedi, passed away at age 56. Michael Reeves, who wrote 3 episodes of Droids and Ewoks animated television series. Norman Reynolds, production manager for the original trilogy, passed away at age 89.
Oh, I didn't know he passed away.
Yep. Mark Boudreau, Star Wars toy designer at Kenner and later at Hasbro, passed away from COVID at age 68. Ray Stevenson, of course, like I mentioned. Gar Saxon in Rebels, Clone Wars, Baylan Skoll in Ahsoka. He passed away at 58. John Beasley, a bartender in The Mandalorian, passed away at age 79. Treat Williams, who was a better known actor, he portrayed a rebel trooper in The Empire Strikes Back, passed away in a motorcycle accident at age 71.
Wow.
John Romita Sr., who was a penciler and cover artist of Droids 1 through 5, passed away at age 93. Paul Rubens, of course, we all knew him as Pee Wee Herman, but in Star Wars, he portrayed RX-24 on Star Tours and in Star Wars Rebels, passed away from cancer at age 70. I didn't know he was that old, age 70.
Yeah.
Wow. Dan Green, who was the inker of Star Wars Darth Vader in the Lost Command, passed away at age 70. Jamie Christopher, who worked as his first assistant director on The Last Jedi and portrayed J. Chris Tubbs in the same film, passed away from heart complications at age 52. Shauna Tripsick, who was a costume designer on several Star Wars shows, passed away at age 56. Unknowingly, I was actually a Facebook friend with her. I was planning on having her on the podcast, but it was not expected, and she just passed away suddenly. Roger Castell, who created the poster art for Star Wars Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, passed away at age 91. Alan Fernandez, Tusken Raider in A New Hope, passed away November 17th. Ian Gibson,
Wow.
who penciled Boba Fett, enemy of the Empire, passed away from cancer at age 77. And Richard Franklin, who portrayed Ciro Argon in Rogue One Star Wars story, passed away at age 87. So I just wanted to say those names and remember everyone that contributed to our favorite franchise. And hopefully in the new year, I mean, it seems like every year that I get older, the more and more people pass away. But I mean, that's just simple math and logic. I mean, it's going to happen, guys. And we just hit the anniversary of Carrie Fisher passing away. And I think it was yesterday or the day before. And that was shocking news right after, I think, the year when Rogue One dropped.
Yeah.
So.
Them playing the theme over at the 40th anniversary panel in 2017 was it was very emotional.
Yeah, it's powerful. James was like right in the front of that.
Yeah,
I was in the front, but it was still very.
Or you were
very,
by a microphone because we heard you go woohoo.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We
don't talk about that.
Yeah, because I just remember that, and that was very tragic. And I remember, all the stuff that happened in Rogue One, and just seeing Leia on the screen, and then just people just saying "rest in peace," and it was a very sad time for Star Wars fans. And it's but you just have to think of the legacy that she left behind, though.
Oh yeah. She's always going to be Princess Leia. Like she will always be Leia Organa forever.
Always.
So,
and it just goes back to what I was saying. Star Wars is timeless. It's it's been going on for so long, and there's really no end in sight. So it's people like Carrie Fisher that really helped that and kind of carry on the legacy of Star Wars. So
absolutely
well said.
There's also another group of people whose names I want to read off. All the people that have supported us on Patreon for these past, I think, 4 years now that we've had Patreon. So there's a list. There's a 3-page list. I'll just read the first names of most of these people because I've never read their names before, their last names. But I'll try and go through pretty quick here. So
some person named Zach.
Yeah,
I'll get to that person. Okay, here we go. The first one, RC Tutos. I don't know. Nicholas, Nicole, Isaiah, Brendan, Tom, Sophia, Luke, Daniel, Josie, John, Corey, Zachariah, Bromega, Hayden Hauser, Nick, Lee, Darth Ace 1, Mariana Atia Arnold, Daniel Scanlon, Sam, Batu Trooper, Jackson Abbott, some guy named Zach Netzel, Fenrir 526, Evan O'Paker, Luke Spring, Arlene, James, Denton, Mob Rules, Brad Mead, Cameron, Edward Raleigh, Rural Farm Boy, Christopher Zenel, Josh Ray, Maka Tautala, Ollie Solin, Chris Bourbon, Aaron, Tiffany, Raymond, Patricia, Liam McCallion, Kevin Leininger, Joshua, Ted, Jeffrey, Sean, Courtney. Second page. I'm going to read all these names. Maya Morris, Jad, Jeremy, Hong Lee, Mimi, Nate, Nathan Shank. He actually has like 2 accounts, which is wild.
Yeah.
Shadowverse, Brandon, Ian Robinson, Nathan Shank again. Drew Peters, Jacob, Johnny, Jericho, Sean Greathouse, Joseph Jansen, Kyle, Kaylee Calpianen, Ricky, Jeremiah, Chip, Rachel, Andrew, Kenneth, Tara, Taylor, Kevin, Jeremy, Jaden, Riley, Brianna, Nathan, Brandon, Wendell Wested, Bridges, Hannah Watman, Jorge, Brandon Galvan, Matthew, Tony, Micah, Bailey, Felicia, I think some of these like screen names, R.S. Cantus Apis.
No, that's the actual name. Yeah.
Kyle, BJ, Chase, Jacob, Brian, Cody, Ruth. And the last page of Patreon supporters: Gareth Monroe, Sean, Kristen Peters, Crystal Herrera, Scott, Alberto, Devin McCaffrey, Nico, and Italiazio, Nathan maybe Nathan has 3 accounts. I don't know.
Jesus.
Matthew, Jim, Chris Simpson, Jacob, Joshua, Eric, Austin, Zach, aka Texas Vader, Phil, Jamie Honeycutt, Luke, Skylar, Dylan Q, Matt Heath, and Daniel Massey. Those are all the names for all
Wow.
the patrons, I think, that have supported us in the past, present, and future. So
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
I felt like
much
the
for all
opening,
that. Yeah, for
I
all
felt like the
Patreon
opening
support.
title in Star Wars where like it's a long time ago and it just keeps going. I was like, wow.
Yeah,
It's
there's
like,
a lot of
that's
people that have
awesome.
supported the podcast. Yeah.
That's
Thank you
really
so
great.
much. We love you. We love you, people. You've helped us buy the mics we're using now. I think everyone has the same mic.
Yeah.
And Colin actually has a special
Well,
mic.
yeah, I've got it
Yeah.
here. Don't you
He's
worry.
got a series of mics. So yeah, you've helped us buy software, hardware. You enabled us to help Colin build stuff that you see behind him, I think. And also, Colin, we were able to purchase a MacBook Pro, another MacBook for the podcast. So we have twice the firepower now. So,
Yes.
for our little rebel band. So yeah, I
Rebel
think that's
Moon.
pretty much every big story. I think we kind of covered all the shows, all the news. Anyone in chat still there? Anything we missed? I'm not quite sure. I don't think so. But the future looks bright. We're still here on the podcast. We're going to try and do more podcasts, try and do more things on Patreon, and maybe do 3 podcasts a week along with Zach and Retro Ray, their comic book podcasting.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Anyone got another topic that you want to bring up here before we leave?
Just want to say I'm looking forward to the future.
Yeah. Tons of exciting stuff.
Yeah. I'm excited, and just a friendly reminder, be kind. That's it. That's all I got.
Be kind, rewind. All right. Zach doesn't know anything about
Hey,
that.
I'm old
So-
enough to know what that means. Come on. I was just gonna
I
say.
don't know. I'm no longer the youngest
Yeah,
one
this
here.
kid over here, as Colin
Yeah.
says.
Dude, I bought a VHS trilogy like 2 weeks ago. I found the Indiana Jones box set that I had when I was a kid. My
Nice.
parents gave away, and I'm like, how dare you? And then I found it for a whopping $6. It was
Oh.
a steal. It's like people want to get rid of it. Man, snatch
That's
that up real quick. But
So
yeah,
for Zach, James, Colin, my name's David, and may the force be with you.
Always.
Or something like that. The awkward moment. We're just like, do we end it or do we keep talking?
David.
David,
got
this is
this.
cruel.
David, come on.
David, you are doing a great job. I mean, if you want, I can just keep talking about Max Rebo. Like, I mean, I can do that all day. Here we go.
Who wins this? Do I end this first? You win this first?
You talk first. I talk first. You talk first.
Well, I'll hit the button. All right, here we go.